basis. For those attending the meeting in the Council chambers, please note that today's meeting is being filmed for live and subsequent broadcast by way of the Council's website. The images and sound recordings may also be used for training purposes within the Council. As you can see from the agenda papers, generally the public seating areas are not filmed. However, by entering the meeting room and using the public seating area, you are consenting to being filmed and to the use of those images and sound recordings for webcasting or for training purposes. As well as being broadcast live, a recording version will be available on the Council's website within about 24 hours after the meeting. With those whose members present in the Council, please use their microphones to contribute to the meeting. Please remember not to get too close to the microphone and to switch off the microphone when you have finished. For those attending the meeting remotely, can I... Sorry? Right, okay. You don't want me to read all that again, do you? No. For those attending remotely, can I request that all switch off your cameras and mute your microphones when you are not speaking, to ensure that there is no unnecessary background noise and to help with the audio and visual quality of the broadcast. The Council standing orders and code of conduct will apply at all times during this hybrid meeting in the same way as ordinary meetings, and members should conduct themselves accordingly. Members joining remotely are reminded that the use of the online chat function during the meeting is not permitted. For the benefit of everyone watching on the live screen, when I invite members to cast their vote remotely on a particular item, they will do so by raising their hand with their cameras switched on so that they are visible for the duration of the vote. There will be a pause while the votes are counted, and I emphasise, please do not switch your cameras off until I ask you to do so, as this will make it difficult to count the votes. For those members present in the Council chamber will vote in the same way by a show of hands. A Welsh translation of the proceedings can be provided upon request. I move to item 1 now, apologies. I have received apologies of the absence from the following: Councillor Thomas. I don't think there's anybody else. No, just Councillor Thomas. Are there any further apologies? No. Any declarations of interest at this stage? No. My announcements. Members' related party declaration forms have been emailed to all members, and hard copies are also available from the Democratic Services team after the meeting. These need to be completed and returned by the 8th of April 2025. Guidance on completion is included on the form. The other issue I'd like to speak about is I have had some requests about members speaking while other members are on their feet. Please have some consideration when some members are on their feet, and switch microphone and switch phones off as well during the meeting, please. Okay, we move on to item 2. The minutes from January the 21st are before us. Are there any point of accuracy? I move the minutes are a true record. Is there a seconder? Leader. We will now proceed to the vote. Will all members joining the meeting online please switch on their cameras? Please do not turn your cameras off until the vote has been counted. Right. Would all councillors please cast their vote now, starting with all those in favour. Members joining online, please raise their hands for them to be counted. Thank you. You may put your hands down now. Are there any votes against? Members joining online, please raise their hands for them to be counted.
Bless you.
Still have their microphones on, obviously. Thank you. You may put your hands down now. Are there any abstentions? No. Thank you. You may put your hands down now. The approval of the minutes is duly carried. Members joining online may now switch their cameras back off. Item 3, appointments. Councillor James Clark to introduce this item.
Thank you, Presiding Member. I'll make it quick. You'll see on page 16 the list of resignations and appointments. I would also like to add verbally Kevin Howells to be appointed to St Andrew's Primary. I'd like to move.
Thank you. Can I invite Councillor Reeks to second the report?
Happy to second that, Presiding Member.
Thank you. Are there any comments on the report? Councillor Howells.
Could I declare an interest, Presiding Member? Kevin Howells is my brother.
Okay, thank you. We now proceed to the vote. Would all members joining the meeting online please switch on their cameras? Please do not turn your cameras off until the votes have been counted. Will all councillors please cast their vote now, starting with all those in favour. Members joining online, raise your hands for them to be counted. Okay. Right. Thank you. You may now put your hands down now. Are there any votes against? No. Are there any abstentions? Members online, join online, please raise your hands now to be counted. One abstention. Okay. Right. 38 for and one abstention. Members join online, they may switch their cameras back off. Item 4, I'm pleased to welcome Superintendent Jason White to the meeting. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you, Chair. Brief update for me tonight, following on from last month. So just in relation to crime and ASB statistics for Newport. So we've seen a downward trajectory from October through to February of crime, which is really pleasing to see. And you've seen the last month from December through to January an overall crime reduction of 9% in Newport. When you actually break that down, there's been a 3% reduction in violent crime across the board, a 50% reduction in vehicle crime, a 44% reduction in residential burglaries, a 50% reduction in commercial burglaries, and finally, robbery, there's been no change. It's remained at the same level. Similarly, ASB has remained by and large around the same levels as well, which is fairly acceptable. I suppose the only thing I just want to raise tonight is I've literally just had confirmation today that the Lumley, the Home Office funding for the dedicated hotspot patrols is going to continue for another 12 months, which is great. Once that criteria will come through, what we'll need to do is then relook at the analysis, because there may well be that some of those hotspots may have changed over the last 12 months. But it's really good to see that we've secured that £1 million worth of funding. And that's it for me. Thank you, Chair.
Leader.
Thank you, Superintendent Jason White, and thank you for that update of all the recent statistics. No doubt you'll be aware there was a press article a couple of weeks ago talking about the most dangerous places in Wales, which Newport topped with a density population of, I think it was 144 per 1,000 population. Can I just have your perspective on that? When I looked at the statistics, it looked like it was last year, and that figures have been declining since that point, since that so it's out of date, that data. I just wanted your perspectives on that.
Yeah, so absolutely, I would say over the last 2 years, the proactivity, so the solvability rates and the outcomes have significantly increased within the force generally, but particularly Newport as well. And as I've just said, month on month for the last 4 to 5 months, we've seen a decline in crime, again, throughout the force, but again, month on month from October, particularly in these key areas, which we all talk about, things that really cause us concern, violent crime, you know, burglaries, you know, the most intrusive sort of crimes. There has been an increase over the last month with weapon offences in Newport, but when you actually look at the stats and break it down, a lot of those crimes are a result of proactive stop searches in areas, which I'm really pleased about as well. So the statistics are going up, but they're being driven up in the right way, if that makes sense, through the proactivity of the officers on patrol. So, yeah, I take your point, but for me, I'm really pleased with the downward trajectory of crime and ASB in Newport as it stands.
Thank you. Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Presiding Member. Superintendent, I've heard of a number of initiatives recently related to the use of drones, which are to be applauded. Anything that can improve detection and reduce crime across the city should, of course, be welcomed. But there are legitimate concerns around privacy in particular. So can you give us some reassurances that there are the right checks and balances in place? Thank you.
Yeah, so absolutely. So we've got, I think we've got 5 or 6 trained pilots in force. So they, when we look at necessity, proportionality of flying drones as well, particularly when you're actually looking at potentially looking at directed surveillance as well. So all those are overseen and authorised as well, if that's the case. So just to reassure you that whenever there's any planned activities, then an assessment is already made, and that is authorised as well by the person ratifying that. You'll also understand that we have spontaneous deployments as well. So persons, high risk, missing people, persons who's wanted, you know, and we've also then got to liaise with the helicopter to make sure that there's no issues in terms of flight zones and stuff like that. But yeah, absolutely, I can guarantee you 100% that all those checks and balances are there and in place.
Thank you. Councillor Debbie Harvey.
Thank you, Chair. Jason, we've had a long conversation about the news report in the paper, which, to be as polite as I can, is tomorrow's chip wrapper. It was a lame headline-grabbing nonsense. All it did was cause a fear factor amongst a lot of residents. For me, it's a load of rubbish. I live in Newport, I know Newport, and I certainly don't believe Newport is the most dangerous place in Wales. Absolute joke. However, on the back of that, I want to thank yourself and our inspector and our local policing teams, because the raids that have gone on our patch have been absolutely amazing. You've had several £1,000s worth of drugs, contraband and money that there's no excuse for having. You've had people put in prison, and it's going down a storm on this estate and in this ward. Our, if I can call them, our normal, regular residents are absolutely over the moon, because they can see the proactivity and they can see that this behaviour is not going to be tolerated any longer. So I just want to pass my thanks on, really.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. It's really appreciated. I know I've talked in previous meetings around the investment, and particularly in the east of the city, around getting some new blood and some proactive young officers there. And I think you're now starting to see the, well, not the green shoots, but the outcomes of that as well. You'll also probably would have known that we've increased some of those resources, so we've had some dedicated resources over there as well, tackling a lot of the drug supply, a lot of the surons. And just touching upon your point about the bad news stories, what I've been really pushing through my teams, not just in Newport but throughout the force, is that in the intervening times we really need to flood the market with the good news stories and the proactive work, because if we don't promote it, then people don't realise it's been done. So that comms and that engagement piece for me is really key. But thank you. I'll pass that back to Rheoli.
Cheers. Thank you.
Councillor Reeks.
Thank you, Presiding Member. Superintendent, at last council, we had a conversation about vehicles going through High Cross Roadstone. and the response was great from you, from the team, the commercial vehicle unit. Absolutely brilliant with their response in less than a week, and they had a great hit on the first day. I believe they've also been out again since and had some success with that. Following on from that, can we make this a bit of a regular event and also maybe vary the timings, because it's not just during the day that these vehicles are coming through. We're getting instances of sort of evenings and sort of throughout the night as well. But yeah, if you can pass on our thanks as well to the commercial vehicle unit, it's a great result. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you, Councillor. And what's really good at the moment is my remit is not just neighbour policing and the teams throughout the force, but I've also now got the roads policing team, the dog section, the commercial vehicle unit as well, all under my direction, and I consider them almost an extension of my neighbourhood policing arm. So yes, I'll feed that back to the team, Adam and everybody else, and make sure we vary those timings as well. Thank you.
Councillor Rheolau, nice to see you back in the council chamber.
Thank you indeed, Presiding Member, and it is indeed nice to be back here. Superintendent, good evening and welcome. There seems to be a perception amongst the public that gets intermingled with, I suppose, reality as well. I've been contacted by several residents whose names I'm quite happy to give to you after this meeting, regarding the High Street and the activities in Newport. Gangs of youths riding their bicycles through there, drunkenness behaviour, drug taking, aggressive begging, all that type of thing. This is happening in the daytime. That's the perception, or it's also the reality of the city centre underbelly life. If that is the truth, then what is stopping you is the question, and how can we help you? So what is stopping you from arresting these people, getting them off the streets of Newport, and returning it back to normality, as we would say? Thank you.
So the short answer is nothing is stopping us from arresting people, assuming we've got the resources to do that at the times they're the most needed. What I would say is that the team under Rob Ball, the local inspector, has done a lot of work since he's landed in post. I know the council can testify to that as well. And a lot of collaborative work as well with the community safety wardens as well. So we do a lot of collaborative work. But you're absolutely right. It's about working in partnership. But what I would say is the statistics doesn't necessarily bear the perception. So in terms of crime levels and ASB, largely speaking, crime has gone down, which has been mirrored across the city. Whereas antisocial behaviour has remained stubbornly the same. There's a lot of work that the team are doing around alcohol-related incidents. I know that there's been several raids on off-licensed premises and vape shops over the last couple of weeks, and quite some sizable seizures. So it's about education. But of course, the other thing we're talking about is PSPOs. So it's about the management of those as well. So just to provide you with some reassurance that people are being arrested, they are being dealt with, not necessarily by arrest, but by alternative means as well, particularly if they're younger individuals. But I'm more than happy to have that conversation outside as well around the more detail. Thank you.
Councillor Horton.
Good evening. It's just to sort of pass on some praise for a couple of your officers. There was an incident outside my business on last Monday night. 999 call went in. It was more of a preemptive call, to be honest. They weren't really doing anything too bad, but the officers were there within 5 minutes. The response team, they searched every one of the individuals. They didn't find. It was quite positive they didn't find anything on them. When there's a gang of young lads, or as you say, all with their hoodies on a cold evening, you may well have expected them to find a knife or some drugs or something, but they didn't find anything. But it was just the fact that within less than 5 minutes of the call going in, there was a response team there, and they dealt with it very, very well.
Oh, thank you. Which part of Newport, sorry, was that?
It's Victoria.
Okay. I think, yeah, no, thank you for the comments, and I think the one thing that we've really improved on as a force is our responsive times to both emergency and priority calls. And we've seen some significant improvements, and I think I've talked previously around how we've become in the top 3 forces in the country in terms of taking 999 calls from receipt, but our response times are averaging over 80%, and our priority calls are actually 95, sometimes almost 100%. But of course, that's about having boots on the ground and making sure that they're suitably briefed and they're deployed in the areas that they're most needed. So, but thanks very much, and I'll pass those messages back. Thank you.
Councillor Corden.
Thank you, Presiding Member. I would just like to share some praise as well. We know that footfall in the city centre continues to increase. It was up 3% in January, which is brilliant, completely bucking the trend. But we know that crime in the city centre is coming down. So I just wanted to put on record our thanks to you as in my capacity as Cabinet Member, thinking of all those businesses in the culture and art space in the city centre. I know it's really appreciated. Thanks.
No, thank you. I think what's really important, I talked about the Home Office funding. So that will continue. I know we've got to do some further analysis. But I was on a 2-day seminar up in Brighton last week, and I think speaking to all the forces up and down the country, Gwent Police actually give a presentation on knife crime in Pill, where we successfully, over a period of time, reduced that and through education and prevention and knife sweeps. But going back to what I said, in terms of this hotspot policing, even if we weren't successful in the funding, we want it to become business as usual, and we can't do that unless we have dedicated neighbourhood officers. So I know there's the government's pledges to increase investment, and you will see that over the lifetime of the government. But for me, it's the money is great, absolutely, because we've got dedicated resources working in those areas and being visible. But at some point, it needs to be business as usual as well. So that's certainly our aim.
Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Presiding Member. Just wanted to thank, and I know Councillor Rheolau touched on it about the High Street, but I just wanted to thank Inspector Robert Ball, because we've had 2 walkabouts with him in the High Street, and one coincided with some articles in the paper on social media about how shopkeepers were feeling sort of a little bit unsafe. We visited every shopkeeper that day, and possibly the headline wasn't quite the whole story of when we went round there with Robert Ball, Inspector Ball. But I know he's got plans. I know this isn't the place for me to tell you what the plans are, because everyone's going to know them then. So that would not be helping Inspector Ball. But a massive thank you. And I think what was really key about that day was he understood what was going on. And I don't think he's going to rest until the figures keep going down and down. So a massive thank you for that day, or the couple of days it took.
No, thank you. And I have to say, he took over from a very competent inspector in Richie Chapland as well. So, credit where it's due. But yeah, I'll pass that message on. But good to see that he's landed and he's doing some great things. Thank you.
Councillor Fairweather.
Thank you, Mr. Presiding Member. Chief Superintendent, away from the city centre now, there was a nasty dog-on-dog attack in my ward last week, where a dog was quite badly injured by another dog, and the owner of that dog has been identified. And yet the owner of the injured dog is having difficulty being able to address the issue properly. The council say that they're not responsible. The police are saying that they're not responsible. Somebody needs to be held to account so that this lady can take the matter forward. Can you help me by telling me, are the police responsible, or is this a council matter?
Okay, so are we talking Risca Road? Yeah, so there's been some inaccuracies, I think, in the reporting of that, saying that the police aren't taking it seriously. We are investigating it. It falls under the Dangerous Dogs Act in 1991, the dog dangerously out of control. If it attacks a member of the public, the owner or otherwise, then it's an aggravated attack. But that said, it still falls dog on dog underneath the same legislation, Section 3. it is being progressed. I am aware of it, and I've sent an email to the Sergeant today just around a more timely update as to where we are, but I can assure you that it is being progressed.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Watkins.
Presiding Member, thank you. Superintendent White, you mentioned about increased funding coming from central government. Can you tell us whether there's going to be an increase in ward officers or PCSOs or both?
So there's two elements. The one I talked about, the Home Office, that's around the hotspot funding, so that's for the next 12 months, but we're still waiting for what that criteria looks like. What I will say that there will be an increase. So we've got, in terms of PCSOs, we've got a cohort that is landing in March, which is going to be passing out in March, landing in force in May. We've then got another recruitment drive in September, so people will be landing in September, and there'll be a further recruitment next March. So we'll have 3 recruitment drives in the space of 12 months for PCSOs. And similarly, there's plans then around increasing our establishment around ward officers, because I think it's really key. When we talk about visibility and we talk about proactivity, we've just launched the new neighbourhood strategy and our engagement plan as well, and part of that is improving the way in which we engage with people. I know the councillor mentioned about speaking to shopkeepers, and it's nothing like what's reported in the papers. Well, I've had recent evidence in the last week of that being reported elsewhere in the force, which is factually incorrect. But of course, unless we're out there and we're visible and we are talking to people and providing that reassurance, then how do you know the message is being landed? So you will see an increase over the next year and so of an increase in our neighbourhood teams.
Thank you. Councillor Alioumi.
Yeah, thank you, Presiding Member. Just to reiterate, I think what my colleague said at the last meeting, that we feel we're quite happy with the service we get in from the neighbourhood policing, and in particular the town centre inspector, and that is Mr. Balls, Robert Balls. We meet with him regularly. He attended our ward meeting, which was about the budget, but he spent an hour answering resident questions, and anything that worries people about the city centre came out. So it's an offer to all of you colleagues. If you have anything about the city centre that you feel, you know, the police ought to know about it, please let us know, because we meet regularly with the police inspector, and he's happy to actually, take on board people's concern. So this is an offer to everyone. Thank you.
No, thank you, and I'll pass those comments back as well. Thanks very much. I think what I would say, and the offer's there to everybody else. So, you know, in relation to the other inspectors within Newport, we talked earlier about going on walk-alongs and seeing issues for what they are, and I think it's a perfect opportunity. I think if you're out there discussing things face-to-face with the inspector in your communities, I think there's no better thing to do, really. So, please take advantage of that. Contact your local inspector and arrange for those catch-ups and those walkabouts. They really are meaningful.
Thank you. Councillor Howells.
Thank you, Presiding Member. Superintendent, at a recent ward meeting, an issue was raised with regards to obstruction of the highway by vehicles. And it's where either pavements are blocked or the cars parked in such a way that other cars, it's difficult for them to get through. One of the issues that Rheoli'r was there along with one of the PCSOs, and they sort of let the meeting know that your processes have changed in that the PCSOs don't carry paper tickets anymore. So if the vehicle is causing obstruction, they can only issue a ticket if the driver's with the vehicle. Can you shed a bit more light on that process and how perhaps we can improve that?
Yeah, that's news to me, so it's something that I need to learn about. So, in terms of the offence itself, highway obstructions does sit with the police. I know that there's been a change in ownership around parking on double yellow lines, that obviously sits with the council. But in terms of dangerous position and obstruction, that firmly does sit with the police. Excuse my ignorance, but I need to go back and speak to Rheoli and the team around those changes. So I can speak to you outside of this and bring you up to speed with that. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't think I don't. No, Debbie Harvey has spoken. He's got his hand up. Sorry. Right, Councillor Harvey, Tim Harvey.
Thank you. Chief Superintendent, last year we had Crime Stoppers brought into Allway, and talking to our inspector, he said the intelligence he received from that and the information he received from that have gone up time and time again. So it's just touching on what Councillor Rheoli said. To help the police, maybe other councillors could be encouraged to have it in their wards. Would that help? Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. And you're right. Community intelligence has significantly increased every time that we've introduced Crime Stoppers in areas of not just Newport but other parts of the force. So those council members who will be really interested in that, I can certainly share the details of that to raise awareness and look at mechanisms how we can improve and increase the amount of quality of community intelligence really coming into us. So I'm more than happy to take that as an action going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. There's no other member wants to speak, so can I thank you, Jason, for a very positive outcome tonight. It's all credit to you and your team. So thank you very much indeed. Right, we move on now to item 5, which is the leader to present this report, please. Council tax and budget.
Thank you, Presiding Member, and welcome to our bread and butter budget, the budget that delivers what matters to residents across this city. As you know, the Council was responsible for agreeing the budget and resulting council tax levels and fees and charges. We have a statutory duty to make sure the budget is balanced, and these today I present our final Cabinet recommendations to the Council. As we released our initial thoughts in January, obviously we did a consultation across the whole city and members attended their ward meetings across the city, and I know they all heard their residents raise issues, concerns, queries, questions and comments. I myself received a number of petitions around libraries and community centres, one of which was from Cyllideb, which I think was over 4,000 to Cyllideb councillors, 4,000 residents signed that petition. I just want to thank all those who attended those ward meetings, including all the councillors, all those residents who signed those petitions, who engaged on an online survey, who made their feelings clear about various proposals in the initial consultation. Your voices really matter to us, and matter to this council, and matter to all of us. So we really appreciate the time and effort you've put into that. So why do I refer to this budget as the bread and butter budget? Well, we listened very carefully to residents over the last year, and particularly over the consultation period, and issues that kept being raised were re-raised over and over again since I became leader. Roads and the state of the roads, potholes, street lighting. I think Councillor Fawr even mentioned it last council, if memory serves, about the light switching on at a certain time, switching off at an incorrect time. Public toilets, the lack of, and I know other councillors have raised them, Councillor Reeks, as well as others on the Labour benches. Grass cutting, street cleaning, the general state of some of the streets. So we, in this budget, address those issues. We are pumping money into those issues to address those concerns that residents have raised with us. But we are also doing a number of other things. For example, over £11.1 million into our schools. That's at 8% in cash terms into our schools, giving the schools the extra funding they need. And that's vital for this city because we're the fastest growing city in Wales. And you hear me say that over and over again, but it has real life consequences to what our schools are experiencing on the ground. And I've nearly met all schools and head teachers around the budgetary pressures, and the budgetary pressures are real, increasing demand, increasing complexity. I know many of you governors will hear head teachers say it themselves. And on top of the extra 1.2 million we've put into our schools in year, both secondary and primary, I'm really pleased we could put this 11 million as well. We expect no savings from our schools. And why do I emphasise that? Because other councils are cutting school budgets. And in Newport, we are not. Homelessness and households, and I know it's a question later on, is a big issue in this city, again, for many different reasons, but one of which is that we are the fastest growing city in Wales, which puts huge pressure on our number of homes we have and the individuals we need to house. There's an ongoing pressure. It's real, it's tangible. Our services are doing an amazing job with the demand placed upon them. And in this budget, we put 1.8 million recurring revenue support into our housing team to support them meet some of that demand that's coming through. We're also investing heavily in our social care services, 6.1 million in total in our social care. And why did I mention schools and social care? A, they take 2/3 of our budget as a council. Two, if you look at the census figures, largely our population growth is driven by two major demographics, the under-16s and the over-65s. The under-16s are growing over 10%. The over-65s are growing over 14%. What are the two major services that we provide as a council cater for? Those two demographics. So this extra money into those core services is much needed to try and meet that huge demand that's been placed on our council services. And our council staff are doing an incredible job trying to meet that demand, and it's up to this council, this cabinet, myself as leader, to help them meet that huge demand from our citizens from across the city in every ward. So our infrastructure needs a lot of investment. We all know that. Our roads need a lot of investment. And thanks to the Welsh Government, we've going to invest over £4 million into our roads to help start resurfacing much of our highways, which is badly needed. That's the biggest investment in these roads resurfacing for over 10 years. And if we can, we will add more to that to start addressing some of those roads. Because I get those emails. We all get those emails. Potholes, roads, what are you going to do? We feel neglected. We feel no one cares about this community. We do care. This Labour group cares. And this cabinet cares. And I hope the council cares to support us in this council budget. Because this is the most money and the best budget in money terms this council has received in many, many years. And isn't it refreshing to have a UK Labour government record investment into public services after 15 years of austerity? And I see opposition members shaking their heads. It's just a mathematical fact. It's just a mathematical fact. So I'm really proud about our budget. I'm really proud that we've listened to people and listened to their concerns and what they want, focusing on issues that matter to them. It's important for you to know we are also making savings of close to over £5 million due to meeting that ongoing pressure that still exists in the system, mainly from income generation. And I'm proud that on council tax, which we set at 6.7%, will be one of the lowest quartile in Wales. In cash terms, it's £1.93 band D, and will be the third lowest council tax in Wales. £40 if other councils carry on with their plans, from being the second lowest in Wales. So we know people are feeling the pain. We hear them, but they want better services and more investment. We hear them. We've delivered.
Thank you, Leader. Is there a seconder?
Can I second, and can I reserve my right to speak? And could I also at this point ask for a recorded vote?
Yeah. Joining forces, that's great. Right. Okay. Are there any comments on the report? Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Presiding Member. Yes, we are told this is a bread and butter budget. To use another analogy, you have taken away the full English and expect residents to be happy with some replacement bread and butter. So, some questions for you. Despite several years of council tax rises well above inflation, apart from, of course, in local election years, where it was 2.4% increase then, which party turned off all the lights at night? Labour. Which party failed to invest in our roads and pavements? Labour. Which party closed the Handpost Library? Labour. Which party closed all the public toilets across the city? Can you see what we're seeing happening here? Don't get me wrong, I think we will all be pleased to see some improvements, but as we know, the devil is in the detail. So, £15,000 is to be allocated to, and I quote, consider reopening some public toilets to support events and the use of parks. I seem to recall when this Labour Council voted to close the toilets in Cyllideb, for instance, the saving was only about £20,000 a year. So it's going to take a hell of a lot of money, a hell of a lot more money than £15,000 to spend a penny in Newport. You've told us you've listened to the public. Yet a massive 76% wanted to make the full saving on Newport Matters, something we've been calling for years, and 56% thought the council tax increase was far too much. You've ignored their opinions. You can dress this up as much as you like by saying it's only a few extra pounds, but the reality is much starker. In 2011-12, an average Band D property was paying £800 a year. Now it's going to be £1,597. Well, a Band I has gone up from £1,872 to £3,728. Not a few pence. And to think it was Sir Keir Starmer who said Labour would freeze council tax if it was in government. A bit like Labour did in opposition when here in Newport. But we all know he can't be trusted, nor the Chancellor. But don't take my word for it. The Cabinet doesn't trust him either. We have a bizarre case of having to allocate £278,000 in case the UK Labour government doesn't keep its promise of a full refund to councils for the national insurance increases. Residents will not be fooled yet again. They will still be paying more for less. This is why we will be voting against this budget. You take from one hand and give back a bit less from the other. Thank you, Presiding Member.
Sorry, Councillor Whitehead.
Thank you, Presiding Member. Did I just for clarity, Councillor Evans say that he'd be voting against it? Does that suggest that he got an alternative budget then, does it?
Sorry, Presiding Member, I thought Councillor Whitehead had been long enough to know I'm not answering the questions today. It's not questions to the Leader, not to myself.
All right. I take your point, but it's got to be addressed to me. Sorry, go on, Kev.
I'm struggling with the comms. I didn't get that last part. What Councillor Evans said.
What he is saying. You asked the question about where do you put an alternative budget, and the question shouldn't be asked against him. It should be addressed to me about the budget in nothing to do with what he's doing or saying.
Okay. For me, my little take. They are challenging times. It's easy for people to sit in opposition and throw rotten tomatoes. I've always said this. I mean, I wouldn't like to be tasked with setting such an important thing as the city's budget. It's well out of my scope, but I can have my opinions. And before I start, I personally think we've probably got the best leader since 2012, since I've been a councillor, to be honest with you. I think he's trying his best. He does listen. And at the end of the day, he's holding a poisoned chalice. I thought I'd get that out of the way before I say what I got to say. Yeah, they are massively difficult times for setting budgets. But the mainstay, I suppose, what people try to do in dedicated offices is to limit the impact. And that is just a massive challenge in itself. Everybody loves this city and everybody wants to do their best for the city. So I do get that a lot of hard work has gone on and come up with a budget. And it's a decent budget, remembering the times we're actually in. The street lights, we can lament the past that they were turned off. Well, they're being turned back on, and they don't come on for free. The toilets, again, it has to be a good thing. The schools funding and the social care, for me, are standouts. Great amounts of money. And council tax is always going to be, and always will be, a bone of contention. For me, when setting council tax, I just think we need to get the basics right. You will please people. I've always said this. Cemeteries, keep on top of the cemeteries, keep them tidy. Potholes, grass cutting, all the rudimentaries that affect people on a day-to-day basis. Get these things right, and the blows is a lesser, and they will soften the blow. There's one thing I would like to say, and I think it should be taken into consideration in the future. I've said it in the past. It is noted that I've said a few times now that we should cross-pollinate with our neighbours, and it is noticeable that Blaenau Gwent and Torfaen have offset their cost by sharing the chief executive, and I just think it's something that we should, going forward, it is something, it's a conversation we should revisit in the future. Thank you, Presiding Member.
Thank you, Councillor Whitehead. Councillor Al-Imami.
Can we speak about any aspect of the budget? There isn't a separate motion for the council tax, for example. I can speak. Okay, thank you. Yeah.
If it helps, Councillor Al-Imami, there's one item that we're discussing, so it's and that will include the council tax. So it's the council's budget, including the council tax, and it's your opportunity to contribute to that debate.
Okay, can I speak about other issues in the budget now?
Yeah. That's about the budget.
Thank you. Thank you, Presiding Member. Yeah, I was saying really, I don't wish to deflate the enthusiasm of the leader of the council. I have seen so many posting on Facebook and the like. It is, after all, his first budget. It is my 30th. So I've seen a lot of these budgets before. I have to say, you've got to look at the details to really appreciate what is happening here. So to say about the public toilets, for example, which I thought really was a very good measure to do, I saw 15K. And I've got a question here. Is this just one toilet, one public toilet? I mean, 15K is not a lot of money, is it? And where is it? Why have we chosen that one? If you look at things that the public were not actually consulted about, it is the things that the cabinet members or the heads of service have decided under delegated authorities. And there are lots of fees and charges that this year alone have gone up by a lot more than in previous years. 10%, average 8%. There are very few at the 4%, which used to be the norm just 3 or 4 years ago. So I think, that is a lot of money for people to pay, especially when they hard up when it comes to other things. I look at another fantastic figure from the Welsh Government, and I think that is a great thing from the Welsh Government. They gave us 8.3% settlement. That is the increase. Again, that is actually remarkable. So we could afford, really, we could afford to be a lot more generous than the measures that have been announced and hyped up as being sort of the budget of the decade or the century or whatever it is. And finally, I will come to the council tax, but I will wait until we get to that. Thank you, Mr. I'd like to know, though, about the toilet, the public toilet.
It's the council tax and budget is combined in this one item. So you've had your 2 minutes now.
Do you want me to
No. You've got 30 seconds left, apparently, now to say something on the council tax.
You drive a hard bargain. Okay.
Oh, God.
Okay, I will say that 6.7%, colleagues, is too high. it followed a 9.5% and an 8.5% last year. And what will it be next year as we come into an election? Mark my words then, it's going to be lower than 6.7%. I think, looking at the people, the people we represent, in the last week alone, they've had news about the water charges going up by an average of 111.
Councillor Army, can
I just finish?
No, you've gone over your time limit. You've gone over the limit. Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Reynolds.
Thank you, Presiding Member. I just want to address a couple of the points raised by the Leader of the Opposition, although I begin to wonder where do I start, to be honest. I mean, the Leader mentioned at the start of his speech the increasing city population and the demographics. So basically we've got an increasing demand for services that increase, or that they cost more every single year, and yet historically the funding for those services that we've received from Westminster through Welsh Government has been cut for 14 years in a row. 14 years of austerity we've had. So, yes, we've had to... it's almost like people seem to think that maybe, do we sit as councillors and think, how can we annoy people this week? I know, we'll turn all the lights off. It's just mad. We've had less money to do more things with more demand year after year after year. Now, this year, we've got a Labour government in Westminster that's given a decent settlement to Cardiff, which has then allowed us to have a better settlement in Newport. So we can start to address some of these problems. We can't address 14 years of cuts in one go, but we can start to deal with some of those issues. So yes, we can turn the street lights back on. Who turned them off? Yeah, we did. Who cut the funding? That was the Tories, wasn't it? Yes, the potholes have been increasing under Labour. Who cut the funding? Oh, that was the Tories. There might be a bit of a theme developing here. Yeah, I won't labour that any further. But let's be honest. We've got a Labour government in Westminster now that has given a fair settlement to Cardiff, which has then allowed that money to filter through to councils like ourselves, and we can start to put some of the rights, or put some of the wrongs, right. This year's the start. We haven't even had a Labour government for a year yet, so let's see what happens in the next few years. Just very quickly, I want to address this misleading use of percentages for council tax as well, because this winds me up every single year. Whatever percentage you come across, 5% of council tax does not equate to 5% of the budget. Council tax pays for less than 20%, or just over 20% of what the council has to pay for. Just over 20%. So, whatever increase in council tax is, we're asking basically residents to pay about £1.70, £1.80 a week. £1.70 or £1.80 a week. Not hundreds of pounds. Less than £2 a week. It's not even a cup of tea. For that, they're going to get potholes fixed, street lights back on, grass cut, schools having more money, social services having more money, vulnerable families being looked after for £1.70 a week. I think that I'll wind up to know my time's up, but thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Reynolds. Councillor Corden.
Thank you, Presiding Member. I know that the MO of the party opposite is just to be down on Newport. They just don't know any other way. They're stuck in that gear, which is really sad because I don't understand why you wouldn't vote for this budget today for Newport. How can you not vote for more grass cutting? How can you not vote for more money for schools, for education? If you're not voting in favour of this budget today, you clearly haven't been listening to your residents on the doorstep, at surgeries or on Facebook, because these grassroots doorstep issues are the things that actually matter. Why wouldn't you vote for £4 million worth of investment in roads and pavements, the biggest in more than a decade? Why wouldn't you vote for more money to keep the cemeteries tidy, something all of us will have heard from residents about? Why wouldn't you vote for switching the streetlights back on now that we can afford to do it, because we've had that lovely settlement from the Labour government in Westminster to the Labour government in Cardiff? Why wouldn't you vote for more money to tackle litter and fly tipping across the city. Why would you put your ideologies above what's important for Newport? Residents in my ward want these things. Residents across the city want these things. We know because we've listened to them. Why wouldn't you vote for more public services and for an improved standard of life for people living in our city? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Corden. Councillor Howells? Councillor Howells? Didn't you put it? Oh, it's all that Howells. There's too many Howells here. Sorry.
It's confusing, I know.
Sorry about that.
No worries. Yeah, I was going to respond to Councillor Evans' comments about the cuts, but I don't think I could have covered it any better than Councillor Reynolds, to be honest. So I'll just move on, reiterate my support for these budget proposals. You know, it's a budget for investment, and in no small part that is down to Labour governments finally now being in Westminster and Cardiff, and them recognising the value of what councils provide to their residents, giving us the funding to properly, finally provide those services. As a Cabinet Member for Assets and Infrastructure, as people have said, it's going to be a really good year now for road and pavement resurfacing. Over 4 million allocated. Why wouldn't you vote for that? The highest in over 10 years. We had a good resurfacing programme in the past financial year, but this year is going to be even more significant. So that's really good news. And then as a ward member, I was just thrilled to hear that the libraries and community centres will remain open under this budget. One of those under considerations in my ward, and our residents spoke very powerfully about how important that library is to them. So now we just need to ensure that everyone knows Tredegar House Public Library is there, it's open, please visit it. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Lacey.
Thank you, Presiding Member. Whilst this is a bread and butter budget and we talk about the lights and the grass cutting and the potholes, this also supports 3,474 adults and children looked after by social services, 343 of children which are looked after in-house by social services or in care. A budget of around 100 million, but this year we're seeing an additional investment of 6.2 million from this budget. 6.2 million, which wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the investment coming down from Westminster, and additionally the 6.7% council tax funding rise. Out of that 6.2 million, we were able to put 1.9 million into the Eliminate agenda, which I know I've spoken about many times before, bringing our children back into Newport. That 1.9 million allows officers at pace to source and fit out homes, which will give better outcomes for our children in care, but also will alleviate budget pressures going forward for the future years to come. Additionally, which isn't in my portfolio, but sits in my colleague's portfolio education, 2.2 million into ALN support. Something I'm really pleased about as a mum of 2 additional learning needs children. This is really most welcome. I've met over the last few months with autistic groups, ADHD groups, and this money invested is desperately needed. And that council tax, which we are putting at 6.7%, but it allows the continued investment over the next few years of these services, which we absolutely need. What we don't want to do is this year put all that money in, and then we have to pull it back out again. We owe our most vulnerable everything that we can give them, and this budget firmly does that, so I fully support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lacey. Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Presiding Member. I'm really disappointed because, we've been together on this journey, many of us, for over 7 years now, and we've been through that in austerity. And austerity really means, cutbacks. And whichever argument you use or whose fault it was, we've had 5 Prime Ministers in the last 15 years. We've had chaos. We've had billions knocked off our budget. And they've used those, to recover those billions, they've cut public services. And that's the bottom line. So where we're at now is trying to recover that situation. I'll praise Councillor Whitehead because he's, as an opposition member, he's seen sense. He's come and defended us and he's come and defended the budget. But that's not defending this party over here. That's seeing sense and that's defending Newport. And that's where we're at. So what we've got essentially really is we've got one side trying to bring light to Newport, and the other one, again, brings a dimmer switch. You know, and I think that's where we're at. We're in a position where you've got to understand that we've all been through a terrible time together, but where we're at now is the beginning of recovery, hopefully. So when we do try and turn things around, then at least try and support the good stuff that's going on, because we just heard our police colleagues now saying that the message we send from here out there to the public is how they see Newport, and that often comes back and mirrors against us. So we're in a position now where we can tell Newport things are changing, and things are changing for the better. We've got some really good news stories here. It's not the beginning, well, it is the beginning, hopefully, of a long, long, great story to come for the city, not for different parties in here. We all want this city to rebuild, and we want this city to improve. There's fantastic stuff already about this city. We've seen the transporter bridge. That's a great news story. We've got lots of other ones coming, but it doesn't have to be political. We all want this city to improve. For me, voting against this budget is it's not voting against the budget, it's not voting against the party sitting opposite you, it's voting against Newport. So that's what you need to understand. We can play the politics all day long, but at the end of the day, when you see some good things, and we haven't in 8 years, we've seen some very difficult things in 8 years together, but when you see those shoots, at least acknowledge it. Thank you, President Member.
Can I remind members to address the chair rather than the individuals across the chair? I know we get passionate. Councillor Reeks.
Thank you, Presiding Member. We've had a lot of talk today about extra funding, and sort of going back and forth across the chamber, Presiding Member. Let's not forget, some 2 years ago, there was £150 million sent back from the Labour Welsh Government to the Conservative Government in Westminster. And at the time, I suppose you look at it, money that could have been better spent on improving services then, rather than having to wait until today. But still, it's good to see that the Council listening to the public again, especially something I've raised awareness on since last year, i.e. putting money towards reopening the public toilet. And street lights being switched on again. Again, listening to the backlash from residents afraid to walk the streets at night in darkness. However, in 2023, this Labour Listening Council seemingly turned a deaf ear to results of a public consultation on 3 weekly bin connections, where 53% voted against the move. Its biggest percentage against when compared to all the other proposals put forward in 2023. The fly tipping rampant across the city, this new Listening Council, with all its additional money at its disposal, needs to listen to the residents, as it's previously said, and either reintroduce fortnightly collections or increase the household bins back to the size of 180 litres. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Reeks. Councillor Marshall.
Thank you, Presiding Member. When discussing the proposed 6.7% council tax with residents and the figures of what it is, many were actually taken on board with the fact and even saying, if as long as we have the services, we're more than happy to pay and actually contribute a little bit more. So with the 6.7 is actually considerate of the public want, but also to enable the local authority to deliver on the critical investments that we're hearing about, as well as within our schools, social services, housing services, and we know across the country, not just Newport, they're under pressure, but we are doing our part. And in doing so, addressing immediate challenges, that is also laying the groundwork for the long-term financial stability and improved quality of life for all our residents. And we're hearing about exciting projects that are afoot and look forward to hearing more of those as the year goes on. And we do recognise that every pound raised must translate into tangible benefits, and this budget will drive forward into that with transformation projects such as income enhancing, as well as enhancing community services to modernising essential facilities, and ensuring that Newport remains competitive and inclusive, and the fact that we should be singing and praising Newport up more, and this will allow us to be competitive and to be resilient behind that, and as well to manage our risks and to safeguard within as much as we possibly can. And it's kind of something, isn't it, sometimes to hear sound bites within the chamber, you know, and it's interesting that they don't come with a full alternative budget.
So it would be nice, rather than that, to actually hear, rather than sound bites today, to have a fully costed, alternative budget back to see where your views are and what you would change as part of the budget, rather than what we hear tonight. So that would be something, and we never have in my 7 years, and it'd be something that we'd like to hear. But again, it's already been exhausted, but it's something that is spreading the shoots up from the last, God knows how many years of austerity. And it is, starting with the Conservative and Lib Dems in 2010, and then with the Conservatives 2015 onwards, the Brexit referendum.
Councillor Marshall, can you address through the chair rather than individuals across there?
Thank you, sorry. And in conclusion, it's just giving us that better shoots within the future, and knowing that every decision that we make today is making a stronger one and more resilient, and hopefully a more positive one that we can all be proud of and will be able to speak and pride ourselves on for voting this budget in. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Marshall. Councillor Cox.
Chairs, I'm afraid. Right. I think Councillor Evans, through you, Chair, needs to just think about one simple fact, which will get him hopefully to realise just what's happening. And that is, the only reason we're here tonight improving public services and building on public services and giving people of Newport what they've clearly been asking for, the only reason we can do that is because there was a Labour Chancellor Exchequer. And a lot was said about the budget last autumn, but it's an absolute undeniable fact. If it was not for that budget, we wouldn't be here. If it had been a Conservative Chancellor making that budget last year, we'd be sat here talking about £20 million of cuts in services. And he knows that's happened for 15 years, year after year after year. The local government, an absolutely cowardly approach by the central government, trying to load spending cuts on local authorities. The budget's been cut back and back and back and back. And it struck me, actually, thinking about this budget, that we're talking about how, we're delighted to see improvements in street cleaning, roads, grass cutting, schools, community centres, libraries. But before austerity, before the last stretch of Conservative rule in this country, we took all those things for granted. I didn't think about whether we should have libraries or not, whether we can afford them, whether keeping the street clean was a luxury. Those are things we took for granted. And all that was taken away in austerity. The Tories spent 15 years trying to persuade us that all those things were luxuries. And he knows very well that list of cutbacks in council spending he's reeled off. He knows there's absolutely no way that this council could have afforded any of those things that he's reeled off. And I want to just say one last thing to finish, that public services they're absolutely crucial to the quality of people's lives. And I must say, I was really very, very proud, actually, to be the councillor for Cyllideb. And because people there really got that. They really got the heart of their community with services this council provides. And as I think we all know, they really got involved in that and putting together a petition and running meetings. And I would like to put it on record, actually, that I really want to thank the leader for his role in that as well, because all the time he was willing to listen to their concerns and act upon it. And so just to finish off, finally, in terms of what we're doing tonight, why we're here, it's absolutely clear tonight, isn't it? It's clear. If you want decent public services and investment in public services, you vote Labour, because there's no other way in Wales you're going to vote for anybody else that's going to do that.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. Councillor Screen.
Okay, thank you, Presiding Member. I just to go back to what Councillor Cox said, I think context is important. Context is all important.
Can I just stop you while we change the microphone, because it's not coming through clear. It's buzzing. It is.
Right. Thank you. Yeah, just to go back to what Councillor Cox said. Context is all important. And the context for this is 14 years of underfunding, underinvestment in our public services. Now, I will say to Councillor Evans, I won't mention Lady Thatcher, because actually these cuts, this underfunding, underinvestment over the last 14 years didn't happen on her watch. Although I suspect that the shade of Lady Thatcher is still walking the corridors of some town halls, very much like Banco's ghost. But anyway, this budget is a good budget, and it's a good budget for my ward, and the council have listened to the residents, and I thank the Cabinet for keeping Treasury House Library open. Okay, so they are a listening council, challenging circumstances, a listening council, and they've delivered for the people of Newport the things that are important for them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Screen. Councillor Mogford.
Thank you, Presiding Member. The leader said that he's pumping money into Newport, which is good to hear. What I'm concerned about a little bit is we say we're a listening council, and we should listen all year round, not just when a budget's put forward. How did we get the situation with the Cynllun Hall so wrong? When we say a petition was put forward, 4,000 people, and that was good. Yes, it was good, but it was on the back of a failure of not understanding just how valuable these facilities are. Once they're gone, they're gone. So if we're listening, let's listen all year round. And there's some rhetoric questions here, but who voted for the closure of the town hall? Was it the Cabinet when they put the budget together? Who put forward the ridiculous idea of closing the town hall? And thank God that it was rescinded. Thank you.
Councillor Rheolau.
Presiding Member, thank you so much. Listening to all colleagues around this table, can I just say this to you all? On this side, there ain't no side. We all love Newport. A lot of us were born and bred here. So don't start trying to claim Newport for yourselves. One of the main reasons that I shall be voting against this budget tonight isn't actually against the content of the budget. I believe if you look into your hearts, you'll be able to see that residents cannot afford to pay the 6.7%. Don't forget, the central government has hiked up, Rachel Robin Reeves, her name, has hiked up 9% national insurance, which is going to create a massive black hole here. I know that the Welsh Government has said the cheque's in the post, but we actually don't believe them, because we put money into this budget because we know they're going to shortfall on us. So we're asking the public to pay again. The £300 winter fuel allowance, that was taken out of the pensioners' pockets here in Newport. What we're asking for this time is to vote this 6.7% down, meet with all members of this council, let all of us scrutinise the savings in the budget. We have 21 days to do it, and I'm sure we can reduce that figure down and keep the benefits and maybe even add to the benefits going forward. You say that you're a listening council. You say you want to collaborate. This is your opportunity now to really collaborate, really sit down with us. Let's get this figure down into a more manageable state. Today, prices went through the roof again for our pensioners here in...
Can you wind up, Councillor Rheolau?
Yes, of course I can.
To go.
30 seconds. So I shall be voting not necessarily against the content. I'm glad you've turned everything back on. We told you years ago you were wrong, and now you realise we were right. And I ask you to vote with your hearts and your minds and reject the 6.7% and get round the table with us, because we can find the savings for you. Right.
Councillor, well, please, not across the chamber. Councillor Fairweather.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Presiding Member. First of all, thank you, Leader, for turning my lights back on Alterine Avenue and Ridgeway. It's only taken me 6 months to get them on, and I hope it doesn't take you that long to do the rest of the city. But it's a step in the right direction. It makes for a safer Newport. Now, we've had some history lessons here this evening about the last Conservative governments, and I can remember back in 2004 when I first came onto this place, and the problems that we had when Gordon Brown cut budgets because he ran out of money. And that went on from 2004 until 2010, and in fact you lost control of the council in 2008 because of that. Now, you say that you've had extra money from Westminster this year. Great, good news. But just think of all the money you could have had over the past years if Mr. Drakeford hadn't wasted millions and millions of pounds on his woke, lefty diatribe. We've had that. He's wasted millions, and you would have had that money. As Councillor Reeks alluded to, you sent back £150 million at another point. Now, I do think that the council tax is too high at 6.7. I can't support that. And what people fail to mention here is also that whopping 7.7% increase in the police precept this year that's going to land on people's doorsteps, along with this 6.7 as well. You know, huge amounts of money that people now have to pay out. But let's push it aside now and let's look to the future, because that's where we have to go as a council. And let's look at future savings where we don't have to cut services to people. One of the ways that we could do it is what Councillor Whitehead said. We could collaborate with other councils. It was Leighton Andrews, I think, back in 2015, that wanted to reduce councils from 22 to 8 to make substantial savings. We could look at doing that. We could share a chief executive, the Torfaen or Monmouthshire. We could share the head of street scene. We could share the head of regeneration. You know, there's money to be saved there. And those are the kind of things that you need to look at in the future, rather than having to make difficult decisions about cutting services, about turning streetlights off and then putting them back on. And finally, one of the things that a lot of people talk to me about are the bins. People tell me that it's not the 3 weekly collections that are the problem, it's the size of the bins that are the problem. And if you look around the city now, what you're seeing is not fly tipping with mattresses or kitchen units or settees. What you're seeing are general black bags of household waste. And I can take you, Leader, up to the Ridgeway and show you that. You know, it's horrendous. That's where we need to be looking now. So, yes, you've got a bread and butter budget. Great. But you need to spread the butter a bit more thickly if you want to get the right results.
Can I remind members again, addressing the chair rather than the individuals across the chamber, okay? That's for everybody I'm talking about. Okay. Right, I've got Councillor Spencer.
Thank you, Presiding Member. It's not very often I get up and speak at council meetings, but today seems pretty important to myself. I can't believe that I'm listening to people who won't back a budget that is putting money into our social services, into our education. For somebody who's got a grandson who is disabled, attends a special school in Newport, and you want to stop us putting money into them schools, you're voting against that. You've just said that. You have voted against it. Sorry, Presiding Member, through yourself, that they are voting against it. That's all I wish to say. Thank you.
Councillor Rheoli'r.
Thank you, Mr. Presiding Officer. Here we go again, talking Newport down. Every year it's the same. Why can't we squeeze...
Sorry, Presiding Member. We can't take this anymore. We have not talked Newport down at all. If you've got any examples of that, we support Newport, he supported Newport, he'll support Newport, we'll all support Newport in this chamber. So please do not use that as an argument, because it's a wrong, false argument.
Councillor Evans, sit down, please. Right. Councillor Rheoli'r.
It's still my perception that they are talking Newport down. We as a Labour group, of course, would like to keep the council tax as low as possible. We don't want to put up charges for our residents. We are residents of Newport. We feel these charges. We feel these increases. We don't want to do it. We have to do it. We aim to put forward a balanced budget. Borrowing excessive amounts of money is not an option, apart from the fact the monitoring officer would tell us we couldn't. We don't want to put our children in debt. We want to balance our budget year on year. It's become fashionable in the Tory party to admit that they got it wrong. No such apology has come from the party opposite. When they ran Newport, they artificially suppressed the council charges by selling the council's assets. Anything that could be sold was sold. And we're still suffering that legacy now. If we were to put up our charges by 5%...
Will you stop speaking, please? Look,
sorry, Councillor has just made an allegation. Can you tell us, give us an example of assets that we sold?
I can send you a list.
Councillor Evans, you've already contributed to this debate.
Exactly.
There's no scope for you to do so again.
Will you sit down? If you're not happy about it,
you can't make allegations without proving them in council. This is a public meeting, presiding member. He's made allegations. I was leader of the council at the time. I would like to know examples of what he's talking about.
Please sit down.
One excellent example is Trethi House.
Sorry, presiding member, that is incorrect.
Sit down, please. It wasn't sold. It was. Well, okay, but it's out of our control. That's something, isn't it? Let's be honest. Right. Will you stop, please? Now, it's been reasonable up to now.
The land that Friars Walk sits on wasn't sold. No, it was given away to private developers on a 250-year lease. Our great-great-great-grandchildren won't see that back in council ownership.
Will you listen? Settle down, please. Really, will you? No.
They artificially suppressed
Councillor Rheoli'r, carry on, please.
By selling the council's assets. We aim to give our residents the best Newport we can. If any residents are in need of help with their council tax, we will of course help them, and there are fairly generous grants available for that. But it was most interesting when the Leader of the Opposition was talking that he's most worried about council charge payers who pay band I. I don't see too many people in this chamber who have a house that attracts a band I charge. Thank you, Mr. Presiding Officer.
Right, thank you. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Presiding Member. I'll make this quite simple, which is easy for myself.
Please.
I'll look this way. If you vote against this budget, it's really quite simple. If you vote against it, you're stopping or you're voting against street lighting going back on. That's the fact. You're voting against it. You're voting against street cleaning. You're voting against money for schools. You're voting against social service. You're voting against housing. You're voting against grass cutting, which I don't understand why you would, unless there's a political motive. That's my opinion. I don't understand why you would. And I think so far there's been a lot of deflections. We've talked about settees. We've talked about woke. We've talked about other things, but sort of I think the real point here, and I'm sure someone said a couple of seconds ago, be careful what you say. And Councillor Evans said earlier on, we've ignored the residents' opinions. Last year, Councillor Evans said, it's a kick in the teeth for Newport residents, dark streets and more potholes. But he's voting against it. Councillor Fairweather, the roads need to be repaired, and I want to see the school back in Bettis. I will be watching. The school is happening in Bettis, and the roads have started to be repaired, and they will continue to be. Councillor Mogford, services could do better, and potholes need to be looked at. Last year, we're doing that, but you're voting against it. Councillor Reeks, 2023. Street lights are the concerns of people's safety. Don't switch them off. Now we're switching them on. You're voting against it. So when you talked about us, about ignoring the opinions of residents, isn't that exactly what you're doing from last year? Because they wanted this. We've listened to it. You've said it, and you're ignoring it. So all I can assume, it's my assumption, all I can assume, and this is the sad thing here, and I hope it's not true, but it's my assumption, that there's a political game going on here, and the sufferers aren't us, are the residents of Newport. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Davis, you were the seconder now. Okay. Sorry, I didn't see that. Okay, I'll come to you. Okay,
sorry, Councillor Davis, can I just clarify, do you want to speak now or at the end of the debate? At the end.
Okay, right. Okay. Right, I got Councillor Forsey.
Thank you, Presiding Member. I just want to make a comment about bins before I comment on the budget. It's not your right to continually produce rubbish and trash where you live. I think if you carry on in that way, then your children and grandchildren are going to be very disappointed in you. If you're producing too much rubbish, then maybe you could reconsider your buying habits and live less extravagantly. If you still have too much rubbish, please ask our waste engagement team and they will help you. We know that there's still a lot of rubbish in our residual bins that could be recycled. But talking about the budget for a moment, after 14 years of cuts and austerity, it's great to see investment in our city. From the comments I've seen, this is what the citizens of Newport want. They want to see more investment. People are always asking us to do more. They're never asking for less. If we refurbish a park, then the comment is, can we have another park here? When we opened the splash park, people wanted a larger cafe. When we planted some wildflower beds, people asked for more. When we planted some orchards, people suggested alternative locations. People are fed up with cuts and want to see more investment in the city, and that's what this budget is, and I support it.
Thank you, Councillor Forsey. Councillor Horton.
Thank you, President Member. I've just done some back of the fag packet maths here, off the back of some dates which were mentioned a little bit earlier on. So these are, I just pulled them down now. So the average Welsh pay in 2012 was £26,000. The average Welsh pay today is £34,000. That's an increase of £8,000. The council tax in 2012 was £900. It's now going to be, as was quoted earlier, about £1,500. That's a £600 increase. So that's 7.5% against what it was, against the salary differences. So that's the average wage. Now the minimum wage. So the minimum wage back in 2012 was £6.19. It's now £12.21. So that's a 51% increase in the minimum wage. So a £12,500 increase. So that's 4.8% against what the difference is. So I know, I'm only using it, I was just doing some fag packet maths, a bit of a Tory thing, I guess. But the other thing which I did find quite interesting was back in 2012, a full English was a £5. But now it's anywhere between £10 and £15. But I did also look at the Welsh one. It's sort of similar price as well. So have a think about the things you're saying, please.
Councillor Callaway.
Thank you, Chair. I won't do too many insults. I don't do insults, thank you. I would say hand on heart to everybody. I think we all love Newport, and I don't think that putting everybody down is helping anybody. All I would mention, really, and we're not voting. I'm certainly not voting against the amazing things in this budget, and there's some really, really good things in this budget. I'm just looking at it in a practical point of view. We have had nationally, obviously, the £300 taken off pensioners, right? And that's not a political point; it's a fact. But I'm looking at just you've got inflation at 3%. You've got energy price cap announced today at 6.3%. I think the council tax 6.7%, police 7.7%. 3 to 4% community, well, those that have community councils are paying 3 or 4% community taxes. And you've got 5 or 6% increase in management fees for those wards that have new housing estates. And that's not control. The residents have no control on that. And it's, for me personally, this is all about the cumulative effect of all of that on residents. This is a big pat on the back for some of the stuff you've got in that budget, but this really is about a cumulative impact on our residents that we don't care about. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Callaway. I've got Councillor Tim Harvey.
Thank you, Chair. I've sat and listened. I do have to say I'm in agreement with this budget. All I do find is the arguments coming through, I think they fall pretty flat when the opposition haven't brought an alternative budget themselves for us to compare against. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. Councillor Druitt.
Thanks, Presiding Member. I'm going to be supporting the budget tonight. I'm going to be supporting voting for extra money for children's services, for schools, for community services, for street lights, extra money for street cleaning. These are positive things that the people of Newport want. Pothole repairs on roads. People want that. I'm not going to be voting against that. Grass cutting, keeping the grass outside people's houses trimmed properly. Libraries, community services, community centres. People need those. So I'm going to be voting positively for what the people of Newport want.
Thank you, Councillor Druitt. No one has indicated to speak since, so Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Presiding Member. Can I reiterate that in real terms, council tax will actually increase by £1.93 per week on average, which is the equivalent to a loaf of bread and a tub of margarine, or if you prefer, a pat of butter, although a more expensive option. True bread and butter politics, because we're not just improving people's lives, but this is an affordable increase in council tax. And importantly, those who are in financial difficulties, we all unanimously, every single one of us, supported the council tax relief proposals in last month's full council. So those who are in dire straits, financial need, will get that additionality of support. The increase in funding from our Labour government has allowed us to set an ambitious budget with funding on road repairs, street lights and grass cutting. This is what residents have said they've wanted, and this is what we will deliver. The Tories need to remember previous decisions were made on the paltry amounts that the national government deigned to give to local authorities. We all remember last year, just last year, when Jeremy Hunt announced a flat-line budget for local governments, despite the increase in costs that we saw, an increase in inflationary costs that we all suffered from. Flat-line budget. We've seen an increase this year, and we're delivering on that. We are now seeing, from that increase in spending, we're seeing an additional £11 million being spent on education, much needed and so necessary. We're seeing an unprecedented increase in pupil numbers, and we must ensure every child is allowed to achieve their aspirations and dreams, something that all of us unanimously agree upon. And we have secured funding in our reserves, which will see an investment on new build and infrastructure in clear and comprehensive, much needed and very much part of our immediate plans. We'll also be building a brand new primary school in Bettis, with plans being currently developed. We recognise the challenge for Newport with an increasing population because it's an attractive place to settle and live. Families are coming, not just from Bristol, but from our Welsh valleys. It's very welcome as we're expanding, but we need to be ready. Hence monies are already being put in place to help support the increase in pupil numbers, and hence the need to increase funding of 1.8 million for our housing services. A challenge that, yes, we're up to it. So to vote against a budget which actually will improve our residents' lives is nonsensical and short-sighted, and proves to all of us that the Tories are just not listening. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Right, Leader.
Thank you, Presiding Member, and thank you all who have contributed to the debate today. I'll answer some of the questions that were put to me and make a further point. Councillor Whitehead about mergers, I think Councillor Fairweather mentioned it. Always up for those discussions. No one's approached Newport. I'd be really reluctant if it's Cardiff, if I'm honest. But we're always up for those conversations, but we will not be absorbed by Cardiff. Absolutely not. Councillor Rheolau talked about collaboration, and always up for working with our opposition groups. We created a cross-party group on the placemaking plan, and the Lisbon Independent leader approached me a week ago before we had an adult conversation about what they would have liked to see, what they want to see, and we have agreed to have a working party to work together for the June for some of their ideas, including a community integration fund. The Tory leader didn't approach me in any way, shape or form. So this is grandstanding, because Lisbon Independents did approach me. Councillor Whitehead is always up for a conversation and willing to talk about things and things he wants to see and things he doesn't like. I don't get that from Councillor Evans. I didn't get that they would like to see a drop in the council tax. Not once did he come to me and say, I think it should drop from this figure to this, and this is how you could pay for it. Did you notice they didn't give us a figure of what they should drop council tax by? You know why? Because we would destroy them on the maps. We would destroy you on the maps. Otherwise, give me a figure now.
We have always said, in the 4 years we were in power, it's going to be inflation, inflation only, and that's what was consistent. Inflation only.
So inflation, what? 2.5%? So quick maths, what we're looking at? £3.5 million of savings you have to find. So what are you cutting?
Listen, this is not going back and forth, Leader, please sit down. The leader's on the floor. Leader, address it to the chair, please, and don't.
So can we have it on public record, though? They would like an inflation, and that means millions more pounds of cuts. That is exactly what it means. In maths, just non-political, just pure mathematics, that's actually literally what it means. Even with this budget, even with 6.7%, which is £1.93, even with the £25 million from the Welsh Government, Councillor Annomestig, and I'll address your point about the toilets, we still have to find £5 million of savings. Still. After all that, we still have to find £5 million. The Tories want to find millions more. To cut more. Can you believe that? Unbelievable. Councillor Annomestig asked about toilets. We'll give you the Pacific toilets in June and exactly the costings.
Sorry, he's the leader. He's allowed to wind up. He's the leader. He's winding up the debate. He hasn't. He hasn't. No.
Have I said? I was trying to answer your question. We will announce the toilets and the costs in June, so you can know precisely which toilets and how much it will be. On the pensioner point, Councillor Calloway, I think Councillor Rheolau mentioned pensioners, if I remember correctly. This budget secures the LIFT programme. Yes. And the LIFT programme, led by Councillor Tim Harvey and Deb Harvey, is going to be sending out letters to thousands of our pensioners and other potential beneficiaries across Newport for getting benefits they actually are rightly entitled to, and you're voting against it. I can't control what Westminster Government have done. What I can control is what we can do to help them. That's the LIFT programme, and you're voting against it. It just baffles me why you would do this. You all email me these concerns. You want me to listen. You want me to pay attention. All the councillors, my own councillors, say they want this and they want that, and I listen to every single one of you, regardless of political party. We deliver this, and you say we're against it. Why? It's because you just want to do under party political task.
Stop. You can't. Leader, can you address the chair to the
Sorry,
chair?
my apologies.
And don't keep butting in, please. Well, I don't know why he wants to look at you, to be honest. Well, okay.
I'm naturally drawn to counter about.
Okay.
My apologies,
Right.
Councillor.
Okay.
Right. Presiding member, it's a tough budget. We have extra money, but it's not enough money to meet the demands. I talked about the demographics. Again, that's just pure numbers, right? Take all the party politics out of it. Newport is the fastest growing city. It's a wonderful thing, but it does put huge pressures on our social care and education system. And I just want to end on this last final point Councillor Mark Spencer talked about. Councillor Davis and I went to Mais Abu for a tour. We had children there who could only move their head. Only move their head. It gets me upset because it's personal to me. Right? They have to share a ventilator. Do we think that's genuinely the right not to invest in that in our school system, in those children? Genuinely, all party politics aside, do we not think we should do that? That's a moral thing to do. I think it is. We think it is. We hope you do.
Right. Thank you, Leader. That winds up the debate. Now we proceed to the vote. Will all members join... Sorry, recorded vote, sorry. I forgot about that. Yeah.
Right, Councillor, so we've got the requisite number of members in support of a recorded vote. What I will do is I'll read out the name of each councillor in alphabetical order. If you could please indicate to me whether you are for, against, or whether you wish to abstain. Beginning with Councillor Adan, please.
For.
Councillor Al-Nuami.
Is that just the one motion for the budget?
For, against, or abstain?
Sorry.
For or against?
For what?
The budget.
The budget as a whole, including the council tax?
Yes.
Okay.
Councillor Baker-Westhead. Councillor Batruni.
For.
Councillor Bright.
For.
Councillor Clark. For. Councillor Cleverly.
Sorry, for.
Thanks. Councillor Cochrane.
For.
Councillor Cox. For. Councillor Bev Davis. I'm sorry. For. Councillor Deb Davis.
For.
Councillor Druitt.
For.
Councillor Evans. Councillor Forsey. Councillor Fairweather. Councillor Harris. Councillor Harvey, Debbie.
For.
Councillor Tim Harvey.
For.
Councillor Horton.
For.
Councillor Horahan.
For.
Councillor Mark Howells. Councillor Rhian Howells. Councillor Hughes. Councillor Hussain.
For.
Councillor James.
For.
Councillor Jenkins. Councillor Jones. Councillor Jordan.
For.
Councillor Calloway. Councillor Lacey. Councillor Linton. Councillor Marshall.
For.
Councillor Mayer.
For.
Councillor Mogford.
Abstain.
Councillor Morris. Councillor Mudd.
For.
Councillor Perkins. Councillor Peterson. Councillor Pym.
For.
Alex Pym, sorry.
For.
Councillor Matthew Pym.
For.
Councillor Reeks.
Against.
Councillor Reynolds.
For.
Councillor Rheolau.
6.7% against.
Councillor Screen.
For.
Councillor Spencer.
For.
Councillor Sterry. Councillor Stoll-Corton.
For.
Councillor Townsend. Councillor Watkins.
For.
And Councillor Whitehead. You're on mute.
You're on mute, Kevin. Councillor Whitehead, you're on mute.
Sorry, Presiding Member. Yeah, there are many benefits, so it has to be for.
Right, the results of the budget and the council tax is 42 for, 6 against, 2 abstain. Obviously, the vote is carried then on the council tax and the budget. I've been asked now, can we have a comfort break? Certainly some officers want a comfort break as well for about 5 minutes, please. Thank you very much. Please. Thank you. Right, we'll move on to item 6 now, the Capital Strategic and Treasury Management Strategy, sorry. The leader to present this report.
Thank you, Presiding Member. As you rightly noted, this is the Capital Treasury Management Strategy for 25-26. It's an annual report focusing on the Council's capital expenditure plans, the financial impact of those borrowing and our investment strategy over the course of the year. We as a Council are asked to approve both strategies for that year, including the prudential indicators and the limits within them. It should be noted that both the Cabinet and the Governance and Audit Committees have considered in their report in their most recent meetings. Governance and Audit Committee endorsed the proposed strategies with no concerns raised. The key points from the strategy is that as a 5-year capital programme is now managed on a rolling basis, Presiding Member, meaning that a new year financial year 29-30 has been added to the programme. The programme itself continues to reflect the challenging financial circumstances we are working within, and as such continue to comprise ongoing and previously approved schemes, as well as annual sums for their maintenance. The capital programme includes additions to our Sustainable Communities for Learning programme, schools, new schools, which have been approved as addition to the capital programme. Because of the affordability challenges, new borrowing that is included in the strategies for the Sustainable Communities for Learning programme, and a small amount of new borrowing with the capital headroom, which was agreed as part of the 24-25 capital strategy. That means that the capital headroom, which is used to pursue new schemes or addresses cost increases on existing, is quite limited. As a result, careful prioritisation will be required when we're making new commitments from that headroom, and every opportunity, Presiding Member, will need to be taken to boost off that one-off resources that we can continue to respond to emerging pressures as and when they arise. In terms of the Treasury management position, the report details the Council's approach to borrowing and investing. It confirms the Council is committed to being a net borrower over the life of the proposed capital programme, In particular, a significant increase in the need to borrow is being projected to the 25-26 financial year. It also confirms that the Council will still pursue an internal borrowing strategy by using available cash resources to defer external borrowing for as long as possible, but this capacity will reduce and faster than assumed in previous strategies. The Council also has some sizable loans which are due to mature in the short term, meaning that some new borrowing will be required simply to maintain the status quo. The Council may undertake borrowing in advance of need where there is a financial clear rationale for doing so. For investing, the Council will continue to prioritise security, liquidity and yield in that order, and will strike an appropriate balance between risk and return. A minimum investment balance of 10 million is still required, which is currently being met via 3 covered bond investments and continue to be the case for the next few years. We as Council are asked to approve the capital strategy 25-26 and the borrowing limits needed to deliver this proposed programme, the Treasury management strategy and the prudential indicators within it, the investment strategy and the MRP policy for 25-26. We are also asked to note the increasing debt and corresponding revenue costs of this in delivering the rolling capital programme and the implications of this over both the short and medium-term plan.
Thank you, Leader. Is there a seconder? Do you want to speak now? Or? Right. Are there any comments on the report? No. Right. We'll move straight to the vote. We will now proceed to the vote. Would all members joining the meeting online please switch on their cameras? Please do not turn them off your cameras until the votes have been counted. Will all councillors now please cast their vote now, starting with all those in favour. Members joining online, please raise your hands. Okay. Was there all 4 then, was it? Was there any against then? I didn't see any. None against? There's no abstentions? No. Right. Thank you. May you put your hands down now. Therefore, members joining online now, switch your cameras back off, which you've done. I move to item 7, the National Non-Domestic Rates Discretionary Rate Relief High Street Relief Scheme. The Leader to present this report.
Chair, can I make a declaration of interest, please?
Sorry?
Can I make a declaration of interest? My business is in receipt of this. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Presiding Member. This report deals with the legislative requirement for Council to formally adopt the Welsh Government's Retail, Leisure and Hospitality Rate Relief Scheme for 25-26. This scheme is fully funded by the Welsh Government and will provide a 40% reduction in business rates due by businesses that meet the criteria set out by the Welsh Government. The scheme is set out in Part A of this report, if you want to read further details. The key points the report under consideration also includes in Part B of the report a proposal to extend 1 year the Newport City Centre Local Relief Scheme, that's funded by us. This is a bespoke Newport scheme which was introduced in April 2022 and was intended to finish on the 31st of March 2025. This report asks the Council to consider extending it for 1 more year. This scheme is a local scheme and is fully funded by this Council. It provides an additional financial support in the form of a 25% rate reduction for city centre businesses that operate in retail, leisure and hospitality sectors. The Newport City Centre Local Rate Relief Scheme you are considering is unique to the city centre. So that's our own scheme on top of the Welsh Government scheme to reduce the business rates for our businesses in the High Street. This innovative scheme is designed to assist existing businesses remain viable and then also incentivise new businesses to open in the empty retail shops. The scheme has helped more than 120 businesses and provides additional financial assistance to city centre businesses. Due to the fact there has been less expenditure to date than originally anticipated, it is possible to fund the proposed extension to the scheme from unspent funds originally set aside for this purpose. I ask the Council to agree the recommendation for the Welsh Government scheme, agree to extend our Newport City Centre scheme, and agree to delegate the operation of these schemes to the Head of Finance. I hope we all can unanimously support our businesses in Newport and in the city centre.
Thank you, Leader. Is there a seconder?
Second.
Do you wish to speak now or reserve your right to speak later?
I'll reserve my right, please.
Right, okay. Are there any comments on the report? Councillor Davis?
Thank you, Presiding Officer. We've talked this evening about the expansion of Newport. We've talked about a desire to be a fast-paced, vibrant city that's full of cultural opportunities and activities. We need a culture of independent businesses settling in our city centre, whether it's a cafe or an art gallery, as is already happening. So many new shops are being opened, and a prime example of this is what's happening in the Kingsway. It's so busy, and so much is happening there. This is happening not just because there's an appetite and enthusiasm for change. It's because we're working so closely with Welsh Government to make business rates so affordable. And that's on the back of our own business rates and our reductions that we're working to support. It's brilliant to see that we're able to support these proposals. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Are there any comments on the... Councillor Aram?
Yeah, very much welcome, and Mr. Presiding Member. Can I just ask clarification? I think the leader mentioned High Street, and then you said the town centre. Is it just the High Street, or is it the whole of the city centre?
The leader will, when the leader sums up, he'll answer that point, okay? When the leader sums up, he'll answer that point. Councillor Evans?
Thank you, Presiding Member. Yeah, we will, of course, be supporting all this additional support and assistances for small businesses across the city. Despite the fact that the Welsh Government have reduced their contribution, we do think it's still very important that we support our businesses.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. Anyone else wants to speak? Councillor Fairweather?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Presiding Member. Yes, it's really good news that the Council has its own scheme of supporting local businesses, new businesses in the city centre. But I'm just a little bit concerned that when you walk into the city centre, the number of empty shops from the Westgate Square up, and perhaps that needs some priority in looking into that to get some shops open there, get some vibrancy back into that bit. Because I know Councillor Davis mentioned the Kingsway, but as I understand it, the Kingsway is privately owned and not owned by the council. And therefore, you know, we need to make sure that we've got that bit from the Westgate up and running properly, because that is the main vein that runs through the city and leads to Friars Walk and leads to the Kingsway.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Fairweather. Councillor Courter.
Thank you very much. Just to, Presiding Member, to make clear, most of the city centre is privately owned, not just Kingsway, obviously Friars Walk, the shops on High Street, the shops on Commercial Street. But an interesting fact, this scheme is clearly working, and a fact that one of our officers shared with me yesterday, there are nearly twice as many independent businesses in the city centre as there are units in Cwmbran Shopping Centre. So clearly this scheme is doing some good. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Courton. There's no other one. No. Councillor Clark, do you want to speak?
Yeah, thank you, Presiding Member. I think it's tough. It is very tough at the moment. In the last 3 years, 48,500 retail shops have closed in the UK. But we in Newport are trying to move Newport forward. And we're in constant conversations with Friars Walk, the Bid, Kingsway, the Market and Newport Arcade. And the Kingsway is privately owned, but I think that why this needs to be passed today is the ripple effect it has to others. And to get people into Newport itself. And it's not going to solve everything. It's like a jigsaw, and I think the policing was mentioned earlier. If we get the shops revitalised, we look at events, we look at experiences. So it's a real mixture, and maybe not the high street as possibly we knew it. And it's great to have one eye on the past, because that's who we are. But if you've got two eyes on the past, you're not looking to the future. I think that's what we need to do, and that's what we're doing as a council. And I hope that all political parties will get behind this, but also when you see that negativity out there, let's have some positivity, factual positivity. That's really, really important because potential investors will look at this, and we're trying to get investors into Newport. And let me quote. One thing I want to highlight from my experience as a developer in Newport is the Council's open-minded and forward-thinking approach. Their accessibility to help de-risk any projects at an early stage, ensuring success for both of us, but more importantly, the community. That's not from me. That's not from the leader. That's from some overseas investors we met 2 weeks ago. So this is really positive to continue this. And I'm glad it looks like everyone's supporting this. And let's move Newport forward and let's get it regenerated.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Leader.
Thank you, Presiding Member. Councillor Anouami, there's a map on page 194, but it's Bridge Street, Mill Street, Clowns Place, all the centre of town, right up to the Dolmen and just beyond it. But there is a map if you want to look at it for your own leisure. On regeneration, as Councillor Corton outlined, we don't own the city centre. That's a continuing misconception. Now we've got through the bread and butter budget, listening to the issues that residents want to see and see action across their city. This is the year of regeneration, and you can mark my words on that.
Right, thank you, Leader. We now proceed to vote. Will all members join in the meeting online? Please switch on their cameras. Please do not turn off your cameras until the votes have been counted. Will all councillors please cast their vote now, standing with all those in favour? Members join online, please raise their hands for them to be counted.
You can put your hands down in the chamber, thank you.
Yes. It's unanimous. There's no need to go on for the further votes. You can switch your cameras off now. Thank you. Right, we move on now to item 8, the amendment to contract standing orders. I call upon Councillor Rheoli'r, Chair of Democratic Services Committee, to present this report, please.
Presiding Member, thank you. This report seeks Council approval to adopt updated contract standing orders, essential for aligning with recent public procurement law changes, recommended by the Procurement Manager, Head of Finance and the Monitoring Officer. These amendments ensure compliance. The Democratic Services Committee have reviewed and endorsed these changes for the adoption by full Council. Thank you. I move.
Thank you, Councillor Rheoli'r. Is there a seconder? Councillor Rheoli'r, do you wish to speak? No. Right, we now move on to the vote. Well, there are any other comments, sorry? No. Right, we move on now to proceed to the vote. Will all members join the meeting online? Please switch on their cameras. Please do not turn off the cameras until the votes have been counted. That's all in favour. That's unanimous now. Members joining online now may switch your cameras back off. Thank you. Item 9 now is questions to the Leader. So, sorry, Leader's announcements. I should have said that first. Sorry.
Don't worry, Presiding Member. Forgive me, fellow councillors, got a bit of a cough. Well, let's start with the really good news from UK Labour government investing £5 million in the Transporter Bridge to help us finish off that project and get that gondola working again. Many of you have seen, and some of you attended, and I hope all of you will attend eventually, the new visitor bridge, new visitor centre as well, which looks fantastic, offers some beautiful views. But the extra £5 million is really welcome from UK government. The previous outgoing government committed to it, but then there was a general election. So there was some uncertainty about whether that money would continue, and the UK Labour government said they would continue it, which is great news for Newport and for the bridge. I also want to put on record my thanks to Councillor Debbie Harvey for all her tremendous work fighting for that bridge over the last 5-10 years, and it's a testament to her and Councillor Corton now that we're in this position to see the bridge fully restored to its previous glory. I was very lucky to attend with the Deputy Leader Best Start in Life 1,000-day celebrations, which was an event for local Newport families and children to attend at University of South Wales. It's part of our Flying Start team. They do an incredible job offering free facilities and guidance and workshops and play and music to all families across Newport if they wanted to attend, including how to save your baby in any event of choking, to animal balloons. It was a lovely event. 280 families, I'm led to believe, attended in total, which is fantastic, and a free service during half term. This talks about our ongoing commitment to Flying Start across the city and its expansion as funded by Welsh Government. Some great improvements in Newport City Council in relation to EV charging, partnering with a company called Zest, which is the fastest growing investor operator of public access EV charging infrastructure across the United Kingdom. Under a 15-year agreement, Zest will provide 144 EV charging spaces across 77 locations, providing Newport drivers with essential infrastructure needed to transition for sustainable mode of transport in the coming years. And I know there's some consternation about that in relation to taking up car parking spaces and the move to transition from fossil fuels to electric vehicles. But electric vehicles are coming. We can debate of how long it might take. It could be quickly, it could take longer, but they are coming. And the fossil fuels will be on their way out. So Newport's trying to get ahead of that game to ensure that we offer our residents and future residents the ability to charge their cars close to their home. And I think that's a good thing. Coming up in March events, there's, I think, David's a celebration at the riverfront, obviously on the 1st. There's International Women's Day, which the Youth and Play Service will welcome around 100 delegates from England, Scotland and Ireland to International Women's Day Festival for us. In addition, we've got the Newport Festival of Words, part of our ongoing rolling programme to have more events in the city centre, celebrating words in all their forms and songwriting to storytelling. Also, on the 28th and 29th of March, Newport Music Trail, a free event for a diverse line of music with performances and venues and spaces around the city. You'll be able to hop between gigs and between stages across the festival. Again, bringing people to celebrate the wonder and culture of Newport, but also Wales, but Newport's music scene, which we all know is on its way back up, and it's another good way people can experience live music in the city centre and across the city. Thank you, Presiding Member.
Thank you, Leader. All right, we'll go through the questions now to the Leader. The first question is Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Presiding Member. Homelessness remains a significant issue in Wales, with thousands still housed in temporary accommodation and little progress made in reducing the number of people sleeping rough. Behind these numbers, there's a very real human cost that cannot be ignored, with the number of individuals rough sleeping unchanged and the number of people in temporary accommodation remaining persistently high. A Newport Council housing officer told the BBC back in November, and I quote, "We do our very best to help everybody, but we're restricted by budget, lack of housing, lack of provision and lack of other services." So can the Leader tell us what is the estimated number of individuals sleeping rough in the city, how many adults and children are currently in bed and breakfast accommodation, what this costs and what you intend to do to address these understandable concerns?
Thank you, Councillor Evans, for an important question on an important subject. I'll start with some of the statistics. At the end of December, there were 11 people assessed as sleeping rough in the city. For the last 4 months, the Council is running Somewhere Safe to Stay pilot, providing a warm and dry space for people if they wish to get sleep and not sleep rough. At the end of January 2025, there were 82 households with dependent children in B&Bs and 335 single people. Again, that's a snapshot of January, the latest figures we have. Since the start of the financial year, there's been sustained reduction in families in temporary accommodation and 94 fewer children in temporary accommodation compared to the start of the financial year. There's other stuff here around benefits and us working more collaboratively with RSLs and preventing homelessness. And we've got the Homewards programme, which we're having some really exciting conversations to how to truly tackle homelessness in this Newport. And I know we had the pleasure of Prince William coming down, who's put his full backing behind it. In terms of how I aim to address it, I proposed earlier on a budget to invest £1.8 million in our housing team to prevent homelessness, which he just voted against.
We move on now to the next. Right, do you want to...
Yes,
yeah,
please,
right.
supplementary
Okay,
questions.
right.
You know, I mean, I think what we've had earlier is this amnesia about Welsh Government being Labour since the last 26 years. So we've had 26 years of Welsh Labour, responsible for housing, by the way, and this council has been Labour run for 22 out of those 26 years. So, you know, I don't really want any lectures about that. Thank you very much. The real sad thing here is we're talking about 82 households, I think, with children being in bed and breakfast accommodation. This council used to pride itself saying not a single child would ever be put in bed and breakfast accommodation. And those statistics are shocking. And it's also not just bad for them and their families, it is incredibly, you know, it's expensive as well. So if you ask about saving money, an easy way of saving money is make sure you don't send them to these accommodation. So surely we should be ensuring that no child should be put in that accommodation, even for short periods of time.
I agree. We don't want any child in temporary accommodation. That's why we've just invested £1.8 million in our budget, and we're investing more money in our transformation, because there's a transformation programme going on with our housing team, which again we have to fund, which Councillor Evans, if he truly cared, just voted against. So he's voted against the transformation to prevent homelessness. He's voted against £1.8 million to help support those families and our housing teams deal with it, and then says to me it shouldn't happen.
Thank you, Leader. We move on to the second question. Councillor Howells.
Thank you, Presiding Member. Leader, some of these issues have been debated already this evening, so having had to put the question in advance, perhaps we can just focus on the last point of the question, really. But I'll read the question, Presiding Member, for the record. So, the Leader will be aware of the recent press coverage around crime and antisocial behaviour in Newport, particularly the city centre, as well as Newport being dubbed the most dangerous place in Wales to visit. What are your plans to bring the crime rate down, particularly in the city centre? And the bit I'd like you to focus is, how will we know if this is working?
Thank you, Councillor Housen. As you say, has been widely debated. Obviously, police are the main partners in reducing crime. Obviously, we're a key ally and key supporter with the police. I have done 4 walk-throughs with the police. I know Councillor Clark has done a very similar amount with the police. We have a dedicated council-funded antisocial behaviour team with a dedicated officer for the city centre. I've met her. She's brilliant. She knows all the characters and knows what to say to them to get them to move on, if I put it politely. So we have a dedicated team. We're funding that team. We have outcome-based statistics as well, which I can share with Councillor Howells outside of this chamber, but we do monitor whether how successful that intervention is. But I want to emphasise that that headline didn't say that crime was actually dropping in Newport. And I strongly feel this. When I first saw that, was this is the... I noticed it was done by the Wales Online first, and if I'm wrong on that, I'm sorry. Or as I call it, the Cardiff Online. And I looked on news, Wales Online, the top 5 things Wales Online ran about Newport, all negative. All negative. In that story, and I read it 3 times to make sure, it didn't say crime was dropping in Newport at any point.
Thank you, Councillor Howells and Leader. I move on now to Councillor Whitehead.
Thank you, Presiding Member. Leader, Firstly, all the best for Sunday in the half marathon from us in the Indies. My question is regarding our updated progress when we make inquiries to city services. I think we should be updated more frequently. We receive an acknowledgement of our inquiry via the do not reply, stating the request will be dealt with within 5 working days. Sometimes we do receive a new note email, and this is good, but it can still be a long drawn out process. And taking this back to residents and explaining how that process works sometimes doesn't get the warmest of welcomes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Whitehead, and thank you for wishing me good luck. I'm going to need it, particularly if this cold hangs around. I know this is a great source of frustration, actually, for all elected members around the speed of response, the quality of response. I hear you, I hear all members around. In terms of some statistics, officers aim to answer member queries within 5 days. The current process involves logging the query with our MCS system and for responses to be logged in the same way. Responses are available in the user account but also emailed directly to members. For cases that will take longer than 5 days to be resolved, holding responses can also be sent. Over the last 6 months, 820 queries were received, with 90% of them solved within 5-day window, and only 3% over that threshold are outstanding. This system is working in some regards, especially considering the high volumes of requests, but I'm not in any way wanting to say the system is working fantastically and delivering the time responses that you all want and expect. I know we're still working with the team to make that, streamline that service, and we're investing in that team to make that service better. It's an ongoing work in progress. I know it doesn't always deliver. I will continue to work on it over the coming year.
Thank you.
You don't have a supplementary then? No. We'll move on now to Councillor Reeks.
Thank you, Presiding Member. In a recent scrutiny committee meeting where the proposed Newport culture strategy was discussed, one section of the strategy suggested that venue owners encourage people attending events to make use of public transport in order to help Newport become a net zero city by 2030. If the leader thinks that it is acceptable for the Council to encourage venue owners to take such steps, then only lead by example and request that attendees at the next Cabinet meeting are required to travel to it by means of public transport only. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Reeks. I must say I was a bit confused by this question. Are you saying you're criticising us encouraging people to use public transport? Because we only encourage, we're not mandating anyone, but we encourage people to use public transport where and where they can. That's surely a good thing, because as we all know, traffic in Newport, particularly over the last week, if there's any crashes, is absolutely dire. And where people can go by public transport is best for them, best for the city, less emissions, but also harmful pollutants for all of us. And I'm a father now, and I want to reduce those emissions. So encouraging people to do the right thing, if and when they can, is a good thing. If they can't, they can't. Myself, I always try to catch the train when I can. I'm also lucky enough, I have a hybrid vehicle, so I can reduce my emissions. But if Cabinet members can get to Cabinet by public transport, of course I encourage them to, yeah.
Can you switch your phones off, please? I got a bucket of water here. No. Right, the next one now is Councillor Rheoli'r.
They say a day in politics is a long time. 6 days or 7 days before I submitted this question is a lifetime. It has been widely debated. Let's see if we can turn this round into something really positive for the city of Newport, as the police have suggested. Are you aware of how many number of citizens view... Are you aware of a number of citizens view the city centre? The reality or perception of the public, well, I believe it's worse than I expected. Whilst we were talking about how to improve things, we really need to deal with the serious problems we're facing right now. Many people feel unsafe on our streets due to the problems like aggressive begging, drinking in public, and groups which we've seen on Facebook and other social media sites of gangs on bicycles marauding through our city centre, with a lack of regard for the well-being of others, with the potential for violence and destruction, thereby producing the fear or disperception amongst our citizens for their own safety? How can we ask businesses to invest in an area that projects the possibility of being out of control regarding law and order? No wonder there is a hesitation when it comes to investment. Do you agree with me, Leader? We need to rebuild trust and to make everyone feel secure so families, friends and individuals can move freely in our city centre without the fear of harassment or attack. To make this happen, we need to take back control of our streets and focus on proper law enforcement. Will you, as leader, use your influence to encourage the police to detain and arrest those who disturb the peace in our community? Do you agree with me that together we can make Newport safe and great again?
Thank you, Councillor Rheolau, I think, for that question. Newport is already great, and we're just about making it greater. We have a zero tolerance for antisocial behaviour and crime. Any of those who make those feel unsafe in the city centre while they're shopping and going by their lawful business, this council abhors. We don't want anyone feeling unsafe in the city centre. You heard me earlier, and your good self spoke to the police. They are fully aware of our views. They have Operation Lumley. They also have other officers there. We have a dedicated antisocial behaviour team. We're doing a lot in the regeneration space, which I know councillors are itching to understand, and Councillor Clark and I will outline them in the coming months and over the course of the financial year to show you what our plans are and bring everyone in so they can discuss it. But if you're saying we need to be hard on criminals and those creating antisocial behaviour in the city centre, absolutely. We stand with law-abiding citizens, 100%.
I guess, I agree with everything the leaders just said. It's good to see that the police are in or speaking from the same sheet that we all are here, because we all appreciate, we all love, we all want to protect Newport, we all want to advance Newport, and with the current programmes in place, I believe that we can strengthen the prosperity in the city. We on this side will always support law and order.
Sorry, point of order. Is this a supplementary? Sorry.
Yeah, it is a supplementary, yes, absolutely.
Is it?
Does need to be a question in there, Councillor Rheolau, somewhere, please.
There we go.
Get it quickly. But in fair, what you're doing, you are agreeing with what the leader has been saying, really, so I think you can make it fairly quickly.
So, thank you. And thank you for taking the question. And thank you for, yes, I went off on a bit of a tangent there, but that's my passion for Newport, and you cannot deny that.
Thank you, Councillor Rheolau.
You're welcome.
Right, we move on now to Councillor Mogford.
Thank you, Presiding Member, and I'm quite amazed there was enough time left for me to ask this question. So, my question was submitted on the 17th of February, in line with the new standing orders. So some of the questions you might feel already been answered, but I'm going to ask them again. On the 12th of February 2025, you posted on Facebook a short bullet point summary of the 25-26 NCC budget with the promise of more to follow. Amongst other items that weren't quantified, you announced the biggest investment in roads and pavements resurfacing over 10 years. Newport's roads, and dare I say in this context, trunk roads, are subject to a huge amount of stress with rising volumes of traffic across the city, exasperated by the M4 no longer being fit for the 21st century demands placed upon it. Add to that the regular flooding of some of our roads, then clearly other measures will no doubt need to be taken to make the road system sustainable for a growing city. Can you now add some further detail to your Facebook post in this environment? Can you reiterate, for the purpose of this question, just how much this secured road and pavement investment is, and over how many years it will be carried out? Can you also assure residents of Bishton and Langstone Ward that the long-awaited investment will really make a difference to each of their concerns, particularly to those long-suffering residents who have had to put up with many years of substandard attention to their highways and byways concerns? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mogford, for your question. As you rightly pointed out, the figure is over 4 million. We reserve the right as a Cabinet and a group to add to that over the coming financial year if finances allow. What I would say to your Langstone and Bishton residents, that the infrastructure needs a lot of investment. That is true. I think the figure is over 100 million across the Newport City network. This is the start, as my colleague Councillor Hughes said, about reinvesting the money we're starting to get into that infrastructure. That infrastructure does need support. Our rural areas, I went round Marshfield with Councillor Screen, Councillor Watkins and Councillor Howells. They show me the rural areas and their roads as well. And I'm sure every ward member here will tell me and give me a road that needs attention. I hear you. We're putting the money in. I reserve the right to put money in. It was a shame you abstained for the vote, though, that did put the extra money in.
Supplementary, I did explain to the Leader that I abstained because of my position in the Council, and we would expect future mayors to abstain from heavily political votes. What's difficult for me to understand is just how much 4 million, 4.3, whatever is, in terms of whatever metric you want to apply, kilometres of road, number of potholes fixed. In talking to Councillor Evans, who at one time, as you all know, ran this administration, they invested £24 million back in the day, and I was curious as to what, in terms of net present value, if you like, if we upgrade that money to today's spending, what that's worth, and that's about 36 million. And I know that went quite a long way in the day. I'm not making a political point, I'm contrasting to try and get a response. 4 million...
Can you raise a supplementary question rather than a statement?
Is this my question?
Well, I think it's more of a statement rather than a question. Question to the Leader, please.
To reiterate my question, how far does 4 million actually go these days?
Well, 4 million goes some way towards fixing the roads. If you want to know about kilometres and potholes, that's a very difficult question, because when I met officers and listened to the technical briefing, it depends the quality of the road, how big the pothole, the scale of investment needed, the type of tar. Believe it or not, there's different types, and the more expensive one, as I understand it, I'll wait for Councillor Howells to correct me, I was listening, was quick drying, when in areas of high use, is one of the most expensive. So if we used a lot of that in high areas, that would be, obviously it wouldn't go as far, but if we can use the longer drying, or still dries, it goes further. So it depends on what roads we're going to immediately look at, the scale of the repair needed to take, and the frequency of use of that road. But I can add some more details once I'm clearer on what that quantum will do over the coming year, if he's willing to take those details later on.
Thank you, Leader. That's the end of questions to the Leader. We move on to item 10 now, questions to Cabinet Member. There are 6 written questions for Cabinet Members. Question 1, Councillor Rhian Howells, Cabinet Member for Assets and Infrastructure, sorry. Right, okay, sorry. Yeah, there's Councillor Mark Howells. A question to the Cabinet Member, please.
Thank you, Presiding Member. Cabinet Member, could you provide an update on the recent School Street trial near St Andrew's School in Newport? Specifically, what measures were in place to assess its impact, what key findings have emerged from the trial, and what potential next steps are being considered based on those outcomes?
Thanks, Presiding Member. To answer Councillor Howells' question, we are working with our colleagues in Sustrans They, along with myself and some ward councillors, were in attendance at the trial, assessing traffic movements and issues of displaced vehicles. I know some of your colleagues were there. Having attended in person, I know the leader also attended one at Gay Primary the previous week. To me, the benefits of some of the street closures were immediately evident. The air the children were breathing as they walked in, it just seemed cleaner and less polluted. Crossing the roads to get into the school gates felt safe. The environment in general was more pleasant. But in terms of evidence gathering, feedback surveys have been published online and communicated to residents and parents and guardians, the results of which are in the process of being collated, so it's too early to publish findings. But I did ask officers this question, and they said, when we do, we can ensure it's on the council website, so that will be available. Officers of both Sustrans and the council who were in attendance that morning, I saw that they were also patrolling and observing the surrounding streets to get a sense of what the traffic was doing when it couldn't get into the streets which were closed. Sorry, this is on my computer. In relation to next steps, the trials were funded by Welsh Government Safe Routes in Communities grant. We've submitted an application for further funding for 25-26. Should we be successful with this, then we will potentially run further trials, both at that school and others, and we might trial different combinations of surrounding street closures then, based on the feedback we get to date. The long-term aim would be to make permanent school street closures where the trials prove to be beneficial.
Thank you, Ray. We've got a question 2 now for Councillor Howells again. No, he didn't want a supplementary. Right. Councillor Morford, your question to the Cabinet Member, please.
Thank you, Presiding Member, and staying on the same theme. With the recent announcement of more money for road repairs and resurfacing in the 25-26 budget, could the Cabinet Member describe their particular role in the prioritisation of where the money needs to be spent within the city? Where there are clear examples of long-standing lack of maintenance of country lanes in the city, will the Cabinet Member look into the cases and ensure that such examples do not continue to be overlooked? Could the Cabinet Member also ensure that the repair and resurfacing work plan as a whole, when agreed, will be available for the public to be aware of on a ward-by-ward basis? Thank you.
Can you please respond?
Thanks, Presiding Member. Last week I presented the Council's Highway Asset and Management Plan to scrutiny. The value of our highway asset, as you're probably aware, is 1.3 billion. The maintenance backlog exceeds 118 million. However, we need to recognise that, along with most other authorities, funding for maintenance of the highway asset has not been at a level where even steady state condition could be achieved. This has been due to over a decade without sufficient capital funding from central government. This year, thanks to the vastly improved settlement from the Labour government in Westminster and the consequently improved additional capital allocation from Welsh Government, we will be able to dramatically increase our capital spending on resurfacing. We also hope to be able to allocate further capital sums to resurfacing later in the year, as the leaders mentioned. We are very aware of how important this issue is to residents. The Highway Asset Management Plan explains how we assess roads. The discussion on what roads to prioritise is based on engineering assessments, so it's not member or cabinet member views. Even with the biggest investment in many years, we recognise that unfortunately we can only do so much. As we did last year, we will inform members of works in their ward prior to works commencing, and also publicise this information on our social media channels. Again, it's something I've had a chat with officers about. We're going to look to tweak the notification process this year so that members have greater advance notice than, for example, last year. So, they've got greater advance notice of these works, albeit we can only actually advise of the specific dates, obviously, once we know when contractors are going to be on the ground. So that will be a few days in advance.
Supplementary question on the answer you've been given.
on, so...
Yeah, these are discussions I've had with officers. You know, I have heard it representing a rural ward myself. It's not as simple as that. Much like with the resurfacing, there are different types of roads which require different types of health and safety and closure levels. And also it's a little bit about, I'm not going to get too technical about this, but it's a little bit about if the surface has significant sort of irregularities in it, then only certain types of pothole repairs would work, because otherwise you would effectively be resurfacing the road. So it's a difficult question to answer, but there are technical reasons why certain types of potholes are repaired in certain ways.
We'll move on now to question 3, Councillor Fawr, Cabinet Member for Climate Change and Biodiversity. Councillor Rout, your question to the Cabinet Member, please.
Presiding Member, thank you. Cabinet Member, in the last 2 months of 2024, Newport Council responded to 927 reports of fly tipping across the city. In our own ward of Bishton and Langstone, our environment is blighted by these inconsiderate dumpers. Cabinet Member, what do you intend to do to enhance the detection and prosecution of these individuals who are illegally dumping in the Bishton and Langstone ward and across our great city of Newport?
Councillor Fawr, please.
Thank you, Presiding Member. I can't quite match the dramatic effect that we've had from Councillor Rheolau, but I've got a few facts for you. Newport City Council has significantly intensified its efforts to combat fly tipping. Key activities include extensive investigation and the use of enforcement tools, such as community protection warnings and notices, Section 46 and Section 47 notices. Fixed penalty notices for fly tipping and other waste offences and prosecutions in the most severe instances. The Council has also deployed several cameras across Newport to monitor illegal waste disposal. Other key elements include a duty of care, carrier licence checks, improved engagement with communities and social landlords, and communication campaigns such as the anti-fly tipping project around litter bins. Regular information and social media campaigns to increase the awareness are all in place. These combined efforts have proven successful. Statistics show that 340 fixed penalty notices were issued for fly tipping and other waste notices from April 24 to January 25, making a 1,000% increase compared with the 23-24 figures. Additionally, there have been 22 prosecutions for the same period, and for the 8 cases put forward in 23-24. I've read that the best way to deter bad behaviour is to increase the likelihood of being caught, and we've increased the likelihood that waste offenders will be caught. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary?
Yes, Presiding Member. I'm glad to hear that you're doing everything within your power, and the department is, and I'm sure they are. But the only way to detect is to record. The last time I looked, and I've been trying to get an answer from members' city services, and indeed one of the managers in there for the last 7 days prior to today's meeting, was I believe you have only 3 covert cameras available. That's the old information I have. How many covert cameras do you have now? And then, if you have only 3, wouldn't it be better to invest in more covert cameras? Because the more people we deter, detect and prosecute and fine, the better overall outcome we will all achieve.
Councillor Fawr.
I'm not sure what the exact number of cameras is, and because they're covert, we don't publicise where. I understand it's more than that, but I will check with officers and get back to you with that figure. If you get caught speeding, you might be sent on a speed awareness course. I would suggest if you get caught with excess waste offences, then you should be sent on a waste awareness course. So my suggestion for a waste awareness course is that you spend one day picking up litter, that you visit the very excellent Waste Savers Education Room, soon to be opened, where you can learn about how glass and plastic and metal and paper can be recycled. Then I think you should have a visit to the incinerator to see how the residual waste is processed. And then I think you should follow that up with a visit to RAP to see how much recycling currently in our residual bins can actually be recycled if people sort it and put it in the right places. I will check the exact number, but I believe it's more than that. Thank you.
You could always take the rubbish and dump it back on their house as well. The next one we've got now is question 4, Councillor Davis. Councillor Mark Howells, your question to the Cabinet Member, please.
Thank you, Presiding Member. Cabinet Member, the School Funding Wales Regulations 2010 require 70% of funding for schools' budgets to be distributed on the basis of pupil numbers. Local authorities then have a discretion to distribute the remaining 30% on the basis of a range of factors so that they can take account of individual school circumstances. School funding formulas should be set out following consultation with a school budgets forum, head teachers and governing bodies, so that all stakeholders are cited on the allocation process. Each local authority must then publish details of the delegated budget, both the amounts and the method used, in what is known as a Section 52 budget statement, as required by the Education Budget Statements Wales Regulations 2002. Didn't think I'd have to read this out. Concerns have been raised from within our councils about the level of school spending per pupil. This is not just a Newport problem, with many differences across local authorities and between schools, and whether funding levels are sufficient to meet the needs of our pupils. Can the Cabinet Member provide a copy of the Section 52 budget statement as required by the regulations and confirm the process and how the authority is including all stakeholders in that consultation process?
Cabinet Member.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I need to advise that this is in fact an operational question which should be directed to the Chief Education Officer. It is an officer's responsibility to meet the School Funding Wales requirements and coordinate school budgets, and they coordinate with the School Budget Forum, which is where schools consulted on such matters. I need to add that, in fact, all this information is actually available on our website. And if you've got difficulty in finding that link on our website, I can get officers to provide that for you. Thank you.
Supplementary.
Yes, Presiding Member, thank you. I have commented at scrutiny on several occasions that the transition in the website makes information very difficult to find at the moment, so I'd welcome some support in finding that information. In relation to the stakeholder process, I, as a governor, don't have any input or haven't had any input into how budgets are sort of set per school. And that's the bit I'm trying to sort of get to, really. I don't know what other members feel in here, but it's how do we make sure that we're all included in that stakeholder process about, you know, how funding is allocated around the city.
Councillor Davis.
Thank you. I can happily answer that. I'll provide make sure you've got the link. Okay. The School Budget Forum is actually made up of our unions, our head teachers, there's also some lay members, and additionally, and very importantly, there are governors that we, as governors, elect onto that body. And that is the place where consultation takes place in regard to budget and other matters that relate to school finances. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Next question, Councillor Ardan, Cabinet Member for Housing and Planning. Councillor Mark Howells, your question to the Cabinet Member, please.
Thanks, Presiding Member. Cabinet Member. It was good to hear the announcement from the Cabinet Secretary for Social Justice earlier this month that more than 450 community spaces across Wales have been saved or improved with £63 million of Welsh Government investment, keeping vital local venues open using the Community Facilities Programme. I'm really pleased that some common sense has prevailed and the recent budget proposal of closing community centres and libraries has been rescinded. How can this authority work with community groups to support them to access the funding and resources to protect them from closure, invest in their infrastructure and be vital community hubs to support our residents to thrive, thus ensuring this proposal is not needed to be considered again?
Adam, please.
Thank you, Presiding Member, and thank you for the question, Councillor Howes. So we are committed to working with communities as part of our strategic asset management plan. I'll be working closely with Councillor Howells on that. Positive example is Easewell Community Centre, and as you know, as part of the Newport partnership, TOC-H has played a great part in developing and refurbishing that community centre, and that's actually currently progressing. I know councillors from Beechwood played a great part in that, Councillor Pym, Davis and Spencer. Also, following that, we will be reviewing the process to determine how to better support interest and applications. We recognise that community organisations may need support to develop such proposals. In partnership with Gavo, what I would say is, Councillor Howells, I'm not sure whether you have actually viewed their social media page lately. They've actually posted a number of courses where they're encouraging, community groups, residents, and I've certainly penciled it in. On March the 13th, they've got an intro course on community asset transfer and how, council staff and also Gavo can play a significant part in that. That will be in the Civic, starts at 10 a.m, and it will entail a number of exercises to potentially benefit the community, but also, of course, generate income for the council. In terms of staff as well, we'll be supporting them, upskilling staff to provide a service, of course, to our citizens. And you'll be aware, as part of the Community Ownership Fund, just going back to what I was saying, the Labour government invested £3,000 towards the refurb and development of the Rheolau Community Centre, and as part of, I want to say, over £2 million investment, which included music venues and also leisure centres, I want to say. That's in addition to community centres. Thank you.
Thank you, Presiding Member. Thank you, Cabinet Member, for your answer. It's, given the debate and the sort of resident feedback around the libraries and community centres and, the real want and need for them to remain open and relevant to our communities, the leader alluded to our proposal to work together to develop a community integration fund which can support these groups and actually transform the way that we support people on the ground day to day, so that those services are then prevented from being a burden on our social services and education services going forward. Those need investment, and that's the hard bit. How do we support those community groups to get the investment, either from us if we're able to develop a fund, or from the wider pots that are out in the community that, unless you're really well connected, you don't get to hear about and you don't get to know about? How can we help and champion those?
Do you want to answer the question?
Yeah, thank you, Presiding Member. Thank you, Councillor Howells. As part of the Community Integration Fund, I think the leader alluded to it. I'm happy to visit yourself and your fellow councillors in Isweri. And for me, it has to be a ground-up approach. It has to come from the community. The community have to have a say in their centres, in their communities, and we have to work collaboratively all together. So it's not just coming from institutions, local authorities, police, etc. It has to come from the communities, and I'm willing to come out and visit yourselves in person along with your residents. Thank you.
We move on to question 6 now. Councillor Corton, Cabinet Member for Communications and Culture. Councillor Reeks, your question to the Cabinet Member, please.
Thank you, Presiding Member. The Leader alluded to part of this question earlier, but obviously this question was put in last week, so I'll continue the question so that the Cabinet Member can add some context to this. Cabinet Member, the Newport Transporter Bridge Visitor Centre is nearing completion and will no doubt provide a boost to tourism in Newport once it's open, hopefully in the spring. It's been reported in the media last week that there will be £5 million of funding coming from the government towards vital repair and maintenance of the transporter bridge. Can the Cabinet Member please outline what this vital repair work is, when it is to be scheduled, and confirm there will be no delays to the opening and operation of the bridge because of this work? Thank you.
Thank you, Presiding Member. Thank you for your question, Councillor Reeks. Not least because it gives me an opportunity to remind everyone how lucky we are to have this incredible attraction here in Newport. It also gives me a chance to thank Councillor Debbie Harvey, because the Visitor Centre wouldn't be there without her hard work, her mild harassment of funders and dedication to the project during her time in Cabinet. She actually deserves all the credit for that. But I'm also pleased to have the opportunity to put on record our thanks to the current UK Labour Government for allocating £5 million of funding to support the restoration of the bridge. And special thanks do go to our Newport MPs, Jessica and Ruth, who made the case for the bridge in Westminster. And I think this is a great example of partnership working, demonstrating how all 3 levels of Labour Government are collaborating to deliver for Newport. As for the repair work to which this funding will contribute, it goes towards the enhanced restoration of the steelwork, the gondola and other features, which can only be carried out by a specialist company. The additional funding will enable us to do more and ensure its longevity. Next year, the Transport Bridge will celebrate its 120th anniversary, and it remains our plan to have the bridge operational towards the end of this year, as we have previously stated, in time for those celebrations. I would love to stand here and promise a specific date that we can all circle in our calendars, but given the complexities of this iconic structure, it would be remiss of me to do so. As members will appreciate, the Transporter Bridge is an extremely complex structure that, like some in this room, is showing signs of its years. The bridge is susceptible to changes in the weather, which makes a huge difference when working at height to deliver the complex work required for the structure. However, Councillor Reeks and Presiding Member, while that work continues, the Visitor Centre is receiving community groups for planned visits right now, with the amazing Friends of Newport Transporter Bridge, the first public group to make use of this space, with lots more visits to come over the coming months. It's great, I think, that Newportonians get to have a first look at the space and the brilliant displays, like the interactive walkway, before it opens to visitors. As just one of 5 working transporter bridges in the world and the only operational bridge in the UK, I, and I hope everyone else, looks forward to celebrating this landmark birthday again next year, and to seeing tourists and Newportonians enjoying this icon of our city again. Thanks.
I hope you weren't accusing me about being ageism. Supplementary?
No, supplementary, just a clarification. Just to say, as the Leader pointed out earlier, it was the Conservative government that actually started the funding, although it came finally from the Labour government, but it was Conservatives that actually started that. But can I just say as well, yeah, it's great to champion the bridge. Thank you.
Can I respond on that, please?
If you want to.
I can confirm that indeed the Council did receive a letter from the last UK government offering £5 million of funding. Many of the local authorities received letters offering funding also. Turns out that it was an unfunded promise. When the UK Labour government came in July, they had to reassess everything, and myself, the Leader, Jess and Ruth, along with officers, have worked really, really hard to actually secure that funding for real for Newport. Thanks.
Right, on that positive note, that concludes the business set out on the agenda. The date for the next council meeting is Tuesday, the 22nd of April 2025. I declare the meeting